It is 6:30 on March 6th, and I am going to call the Planning Commission meeting to order. First item of business is the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Item number 3 on the agenda is the role of the Planning Commission. I'm just going to read this real quickly. The Planning Commission consists of 5 residents appointed by the City Council. The Commission administrates the comprehensive plan, zoning, and subdivision regulations. The Commission conducts public hearings and provides recommendations to the City Council. It is the City Council who may approve or deny land use applications. Moving on to item number 4, approval of the agenda. Is there any changes?
No.
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Do we need to do roll call since Peter's not here or no?
I can't remember. No.
Might as well do it.
It's up to you.
We're going to do roll call votes. Jeff? Aye. Paul?
Aye.
Nick?
Aye.
Aye. Item number 5, consent agenda. These are routine or previously discussed items are enacted with one motion. The only item on the consent agenda is the Planning Commission minutes from February 6, 2025.
Motion to approve.
One second.
We're going to do a roll call vote. Jeff? Aye. Paul?
Aye.
Nick?
Aye.
Aye. Moving on to item number 6, open forum. Open forum is for public comments and are limited to 3 minutes for non-agenda items. If you're up here to discuss about a non-agenda item, state your name and address. The commission will take no action. The items referred to staff. Group commenters are asked to have one main speaker. Is there anyone here for open forum? All right. Moving on to item number 7, council update.
Okay, so for the 11th, we decided to have a work session with the EDA, which we did on the 25th regarding tax forfeit properties. North Diamond Lake Trail, we decided to go through with getting plans and specs for a trail along the north side of North Diamond Lake from River Hills entrance to the east and down to Vinewood. IUP from Extended Business, we had a long discussion on that one. It pretty much mimicked what you guys had discussed. And what was approved was similar what you had discussed, with the exception of the north driveway would be moved within, I think, a year, or removed after it got past the house. I think that was the resolution. We passed the garbage and refuse change. And then on the 25th, I may run out of power here. 25th was a long meeting. We had presentations from Kevin, from CARE, from Three Rivers Park District. There was a lot of discussion about Three Rivers Park District and their land acquisition along the river. DCM Farms, we got a little presentation on some of the changes you're probably going to see tonight. We discussed one financing mechanism for the Parkway neighborhood. There's some, basically it's the road going in there. There was some discussion on how to finance putting that in to the property. Conditional use on that 1 acre lot to get impervious services approval. That was passed. We did voted to go out for plan improvement bids on LC Stevens Park, and then there was some discussion on, on the LC Stevens master plan, we approved that bid. And then there was discussion on bids to do the Area 21 Park, Bremer, which is in River Trails, and then the Island Gardens upgrade, and then the LC Stevens Phase 3. That went out for bid, or was approved. And then we had a long discussion on parking regulations, similar to your discussion, and we, I think, ended up doing nothing with it, I believe. Is that what we- And then the sign ordinance, it looks like we, I think it was to basically undo what we had done.
Partially approved, so that Hayden can.
Yeah, related to increasing size of the monument height, monument sign height.
Yeah,
And then the language related to the right-of-way,
Right-of-way
essentially
ones.
what you guys had agreed upon at the last planning commission meeting.
That's it. Questions?
No.
No questions?
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. All right, moving on to item number 8, public hearings. Item 8A is for DCM Farms, and I'm going to let John speak because a couple of items that are on the agenda are no longer on the agenda. Like
Sure.
Comp plan amendment.
So I'll start at kind of a larger scale. So first, where this is located. So this is off of Fernbrook and 113th, so Dean's Country Manors in the southeast corner. The project involves applications for a comprehensive plan amendment, a zoning map amendment, a plan unit development, and a preliminary plat. The comprehensive plan amendment, the property is guided for low-density residential. In the original application proposed commercial in this corner. The developer is now proposing to plat that as an outlot, meaning it would be subdivided at a future date. And therefore, the comprehensive plan amendment is not needed at this time. So that has been removed as the application. The comprehensive plan amendment also happens to trigger a mandatory environmental assessment worksheet, or EAW for short. So being that the comprehensive plan amendment is removed, the EAW is no longer necessary, although we've gone through the process of creating it and are recommending that the EAW continue. So that can be used in the future. So let's see what else. Yeah. The whole area, generally it's a 91-acre parcel. They're proposing 253 single-family homes and 8 acres of future commercial retail. This project has been before the Planning Commission a number of times. It was reviewed fairly in depth in February. The Commission had recommended a number of changes. I believe the applicant has submitted a revised plan that addresses, I believe, all the changes, and that's what you see before you. The revised plans came in fairly recently, and staff has not had an opportunity to conduct a full review. I guess our recommendation is if the Planning Commission is comfortable with the layout of the property, the staff is recommending that you recommend approval. We'll finish our review prior to it going before the City Council. So normally, the Planning Commission takes action in the early part of the month and the Council in the late part of the month. If we're not able to complete our review or we find something concerning, it might go to Council a couple weeks later. So that's the quick summary. Changes since from January to February. So, January, the January plan had 266 lots. The largest number of lots were 103 lots that were designed as 40-foot wide. The revised plan reduced the total number of lots from 266 to 253. The number of 40-foot lots reduced from 103 to 33. So there was a significant difference, and Understand it's difficult to read on here, but it shows the difference between, I'll say, the before and after number. The primary change in this, one of them is setbacks. So on the January plan, these were designed with 5-foot side yard setbacks. The February plan is 7.5. So 7.5 is the minimum property lines or side yard setback that's required in the R3 district. The January plan had shown this as a private street. It's been expanded to being a full-sized public street with on-street parking. So as you can see, this skinnier street kind of meandered around, whereas this is fairly straight. It also reduced the amount of buffer along Fernbrook. Probably one of the largest changes, this was a cul-de-sac and then an intersection here. That is now a connected street, which eliminated the intersection. What else? So there were changes in essentially the number of lots that were at a certain size. So like for instance, the number of 55-foot lots increased from 28 to 66. And then as I mentioned before, the commercial is planned as an outlot, so that would be considered for platting in the future. What else do I have? And this slide just kind of explains the comprehensive plan. So once again, the developer has removed this from the application. The plan on the top is what was included in the January sketch plan. So this showed a gas station, daycare, a coffee shop, and a few residential or a few commercial buildings, and that's all just kind of pushed off for future consideration. With the EAW, this is a fairly lengthy or detailed study that I believe covers 21 different environmental aspects. Probably the one that's of most interest in this case is traffic. So it's estimated that this project would add roughly 11,000 trips per day. So a trip is, say, one trip home and then one trip away. So most of this traffic is tied to the commercial area. So being that the commercial area is being removed from the project, that reduces considerably the amount of traffic that's associated with the residential. There's still going to be a lot of cars here. The chart at the lower end kind of is indicative of I'm going to say the grading of each intersection or the level of service. So the level of service is graded on an A through F scale. Currently, if this project were not built, it's graded as an F for westbound traffic at both Fernbrook and 117th, as well as Fernbrook and Rush Creek Parkway. So essentially, there's an inability of making left-hand turns safely. If the project is built, it's not just left-hand turns, but also right-hand turns out of Rush Creek is the primary concern. This image here shows a planned roundabout, so this is not part of the project. This is something that staff has worked on. We've had conversations with Hennepin County, but this is not a funded project. So the idea of this is essentially it shows how a roundabout would work at Rush Creek, 114th, potentially 117th. Zoning map amendment. The property currently is zoned A1 agricultural, and so the request is to rezone this from A1 to R3 with the PUD overlay. This is similar to Sundance Greens, adjacent to the south. With the PUD, it allows deviations from minimum standards in the city code in return for a public benefit. So in this case, the requested deviations is the more narrower lot. So whereas the R3 district allows lots 55 feet wide, this is proposing 40 feet. Also, the R3 district allows up to 30% of the lots to be 62 feet or narrower, whereas this project is proposing 57% of the lots. The lots that are highlighted in yellow are the lots that are less than 62 feet. Okay. You know, in conversations with the city council, there's some concern about the appearance of 50-foot lots. And the developer had pointed out that we do have 50-foot lots and Sundance Greens in this area that's outlined in red. And this is the homes that are 50 feet wide. Let's see. So PUD, we talked about deviations. So with deviations comes a public benefit. The public benefit in this case is the developer will construct the roundabout on 114th. This is roughly a $2 million project, give or take. I think Jason's nodding his head. Maybe? What, 1.5 well, yeah, it's expensive. As well as improvements to 117th. And we haven't identified what those improvements are. The thought is that it would be a proportional share. At the January meeting, staff had also suggested amenities. This was brought forward to the Park Commission earlier. The Park Commission did recommend the idea of pergolas. So staff brought up the idea of having one that's at this stormwater pond, and then a second one that's adjacent to the trail. After thinking about it a little bit, it might be better to place this in the corner here, but I know there's stormwater infrastructure that we also have to plan around. So I don't have a magic idea for this, but would be looking for any suggestions. What else? And this is the grading plan just as a reference. So I believe the developer is here, but there's, yep, right in the, so any questions? And once again, this was a public hearing, or is a public hearing that's been continued to tonight.
One question I have, and I don't know if you know the answer, and maybe the developer does, but if you added those amenities, is who's going to be responsible for maintaining them? I don't know if this is going to be HOA, like a master HOA for some common area amenities, but as that discussion came up?
No.
Yeah.
I think I can answer that. I guess I'm assuming that it's HOA. It's an HOA governed. Some, like the villas, those narrow lots are all grass mowed. The landscape berms coming up the roads, etc. I would see the only thing I would say in there that is an HOA taken care of is, the up in the northwest corner is that part of the city park. That obviously would go with the city and those other 4 quadrants. And then I guess, the bike trails long-term will go to the city trail system.
All right. Do you want to say anything, or do you want to just field questions? I mean, this is our 3rd time, I think, so.
Yeah, I mean, I think, all gotten clarity after, the different times we've been here. And so I think any of the changes we had, suggested we had made them. On the EAW, I mean, I think, that really isn't a concern now, I guess, but the traffic, I think, is assuming, maybe gas station, how many does a gas station even happen? Obviously, right, a gas station is going to have more traffic than a daycare. So, and I haven't, since the last meetings, I did reach out to one gentleman. I don't really know anyone owning an assisted living, but I think that was a question. The one gentleman I asked that I know in Brainerd owns, he's not interested in the cities. The cost is too high. But I do see a need, as I said, I'm looking right now at my dad and those, and so, but I think what I really wanted to come in is just the idea, I haven't marketed to anybody, I think just, to see if there seemed to, what the city's opinion was to have an area there. But I think before we go any further, really, I know the county's going to decide what kind of roundabout's built, and it's probably really premature to do anything until that roundabout is constructed.
Do you have any questions up here?
Actually, Mr. Chair, I have a couple questions. First of all, I want to commend you, Mr. Dehn, for taking some suggestions and bring them back to staff. It's not easy to take away parcels, I get that, but in my opinion, this is a much better plan than the one that was presented last month. Obviously, it's still a work in progress, right? So we don't know what that outlot is or when it's going to be constructed or when you're going to come back to the planning commission. The one critical area that I still want to see addressed a little bit is that intersection, the 114th and Fernbrook. So we know supposedly that it's going to be a roundabout. We just don't know what that roundabout looks like, right? And so there's still potential impact to those property owners just to the north there to make sure that they still have adequate access. By approving this plan, we were saying that we're okay with the alignment of streets and lots and all that stuff. And those alignments of streets and lots might need to be shifted around if that roundabout just doesn't work in the configuration that we want it to work in.
So you're saying if the roundabout shifts south?
Correct.
Yeah.
If it shifts south, the Plat,
Yep.
it's gonna have to change, or at least, where public rights of way are, or whatever it might be. So just to take that in consideration. The other question I have here potentially is for Jason too. So if we're looking at, long-term plan here, if we're looking at a roundabout at 114th and potentially one at 117th, is there an opportunity to petition the council to reduce the speed limit on Fernbrook at that point?
We could do, that would be part of the intent of having roundabouts, is to reduce the speed as well. To reduce the speed limit, we would have to go through a speed study. At that point, it's at the mercy of the drivers, because the city is essentially forced into selecting the speed at a certain percentile of traffic. So it's, you don't, unfortunately, you can't just pick your speed limit to enforce. So,
Correct, yeah.
it could certainly be evaluated, though.
Right, I was thinking with the proximity between 114th and 117th being roundabouts, you're not going that fast through there anyway. So to continue a lower speed south of even 114th, maybe to Rush Creek too, it makes sense to me anyway. It would address some concerns that residents have along Fernbrook as far as the safety and walkability of Fernbrook Lane right now. And just with those traffic inhibitors in place, it just seems to make sense. I don't know if it's something we want to bring to Hennepin County or not. And again, if we even can,
Yep.
yeah, I understand that.
Yep.
And then the third question I had is that, obviously you're looking at this outlot. What are your best plans for when that might be developed? Are we coming back here in a month? Are we coming back in a year, 3 years, 5 years? What are we looking at?
So I would just know from us working at, up on Rush Creek in that parkway, we submitted opinion based on what we were told to draw up, design. And I think it was 5 times. The county made changes, we made their changes, they changed them again. And maybe Jason can add to this, but I would imagine there's probably a year, for the county to, or at least it would take all of 2025, and that's probably a 26 construction. And to your point, really, to come in and plat, say, any commercial area,
Yep.
let's say that does shift, right? And then it's gonna, 8 acres might be 7.5, and realistically, just how it lays out with the park, or, the 114th, on the north side of that, if it does shift south, all I can see being there is green space anyhow. You're not going to put a house there, so I think that's really as much as any reason as sitting here talking to table that is just let's get that designed. Really, figure out. It's no matter what I say, probably even you guys, right? It's going to be the county's, stamp of approval.
All the questions I had, thank you.
Yeah, can you go back to the plat map, John?
Yep.
I think this will help myself and maybe some residents that are concerned, because just echoing a little bit of one of Jeff's comments is, we need to protect those residents if a roundabout goes in, to make sure they can access the driveway. And there's just a lot of unknowns, meaning the timing of when 117th becomes a roundabout, or what if it becomes a signalized intersection, then they can't even loop around to come back in their driveway. But I think explain Tom, how you envision the staging happening of that 114th extension to Fernbrook in the first place? Of, you know, as development happens, where's that fit into everything?
The roundabout?
No, the 114th from Glacier
Oh.
to Fernbrook. Because my understanding is 113th is still going to be used to access this development until,
I would imagine us first building this connection street here and not building this. It'd be foolish for us to build this here and maybe have to tear it all out. So I see, you know, it would be running 113th to Glacier and then
Glacier up. And so once the roundabout design is complete, that's when it'll extend from Glacier, well, that or when the other timing kicks in,
Yeah.
that's when it'll extend.
Yeah.
And then 113th gets abandoned.
And
113th would get abandoned,
Yeah,
yes.
and so by the time that happens, council, everyone needs to be realizing that, I guess I'm not a huge fan of the idea of not having a median where people are shooting out a roundabout, trying to make a left turn in their home, but they might not be able to because they're southbound traffic. I think granted, the traffic's moving slower at least, so it's, if there's a rear end when you shoot out of a roundabout and someone is waiting to make that turn. So I would prefer that we can figure it out with either having the roundabout at 117th or not having a median that blocks their driveway.
And I think we were thinking if there was a meeting, hopefully the goal would be to, you know, have like a peninsula, you know, the sign, and maybe colored lines if there was a car that had to get in between there.
Yeah. Also make it wider so they almost have a little bit of space to wait to make that left-hand turn so cars can go around them.
No, I was thinking, so you say you got a triangle at the far tip.
Yeah.
You know, and then instead of running a median all the way, or, median all the way to the roundabout, there would be a cutout maybe to get into the driveway, you know, 10 feet or whatever they can make the left turn in.
Okay.
I think that's a little bit of what we talked about with staff.
Yeah, that's my biggest concern, and it's just a lot of uncertainty because there's things outside of your control too with the 117th.
Yeah, and I think if at the end of it, you know, we were kind of just putting out their line in close to the existing one, but, you know, I think as you get in there and really have discussions with the county, right, we probably pull it as far south as we can, right, so it doesn't affect southerly people.
Okay.
And I think that just makes sense. And
The more we can nudge it south too, the more of a buffer we can give to the first property too. Because
Yeah.
right now
Yeah.
that roundabout is
And-
right at it, so.
And I think literally as it looks, it's gonna flow south a little bit.
Yeah. Just to clarify too, on the villas in the northeast corner, the changes to that loop road, Tom, are they two-way traffic around the whole thing and parking on one side, or what?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, those are made full
Yep.
with streets now.
Okay.
So, and then the other thing you notice, we probably would have had 3 or 4 more houses lost in the count, you know, like 250, but then staff really wanted that existing house to go away. And it seems like, I'm talking to my cousin, he's not gonna be there long term, you know, he actually gonna be there very short term. So we'll end up taking that house out, and then that added a few others.
Yeah, and complete that corner.
And this stub road, I'm assuming that would be a private driveway that serves those
That
4
would be
homes?
private, similar to the alley. You know, the alley would be, the only public road is the loop going around. The other 2 would be just like going into a town, you know, private.
Any further questions to the applicant?
No, I like the update, not having that first entry. I can't remember what name of the road that was, but
Yeah.
it's nice to
Thank you.
smooth that out.
Thanks.
Yep. This is a public hearing. At this time, if members from the public want to come forward and speak on the project, feel free. Your comments are going to be limited to 3 minutes, especially if there's a lot. Now, we're not going to be sticking to it, but there's a lot of people in the room. We just want to make sure everyone gets a chance to speak. So prepare your comments and think about them. wants to come forward?
Nobody wants to be first.
Huh?
Nobody wanted to be first.
Nobody wants to be first. Lee Hallquist, 11471 Fernbrook Lane. I have the northernmost house in that row of 6. The concern that I've come here consistently with is drainage. Nobody's, I'm pumping a lot more water than I'm using, so it's not like it's coming from my septic system, my well, it's coming from the ground somewhere. And nobody's addressing it. I haven't heard anybody talk about it here, and Tom said he'll fix it, and I believe he'll do his best, but I need to be sure that you're not going to keep pumping water into my house. So I don't see anything of that in the plans, and I guess I just want to have an idea what's going on. As I understand it, the hill behind my house is just going to be wiped away, gone. Is that, nobody's actually said that, but that's how I understand it to be. To Jeff's comment, walkability on Fernbrook is non-existent. You're taking your life in your hands out there. My other concern right now is wind-blown garbage. I picked up a 50-foot roll of sill seam this week in my yard, and last week I picked up a piece of 4x4, 1.5-inch pink styrofoam insulation. There's all kinds of it in there on that field. The county had people out last week pulling garbage out of the west side of Fernbrook Lane, or of Elm Creek Park Reserve, I'm sorry. I don't think I should have to go out and pick up somebody else's garbage, and I certainly shouldn't have to pick it up out of my yard. So, and then my other concern is the cost of all of this to me. I mean, I'm subsidizing the developer basically because I'm going to get an assessment. I'm going to have to buy some kind of super fancy valve for like $5,000, I'm told, to shut water off. So I'm out like $26,000 before water touches my property. And I don't think that's fair. I think somebody ought to be subsidizing that for us. So, anyway, those are my concerns for right now. I'm sure I'll be seeing somebody Tuesday, so y'all have a good evening.
Thank you.
Oh, come on, I know you want that.
Just to note, Mr. Chair, we also do have one person online with their hand raised, so.
Hi,
Hello.
Marcia Grover, 11320 Fernbrook Lane. I live across from where he wants to put his commercial development. First of all, I want to say in this day and age, you can have anything you want delivered to your door within a couple hours. Whether it's groceries, clothes, appliances, tools, you can even have cars delivered to your door. So, many brick and mortar stores are going belly up. Joann Fabrics and Polly's in Maple Grove is just an example. And J.C. Penney's has been sitting there empty for years. So these buildings at DCM will probably end up empty, just like over at Raintree Plaza. That thing has been struggling for 30 years. Secondly, I'd like to refresh your memory at the last meeting discussing the proposed gas station. One of you said, and I think it was you, said Champlin has a Bill's Superette among houses and they don't have any problems. Do you know that for certain? Did you talk to the city of Champlin? You're comparing apples to oranges when you do that, because the Bill's Superette on West River Road has no holding pond right next door to it. Nothing. The nearest holding pond is on 121 on the Champlin-Dayton border. Also, those people that live there, they all have city sewer and water. We have wells. Do you know what wells do? Have you ever driven onto 121? Every house on 121 from the Maple Grove border to the Champlin border has a well. They don't have city sewer and water. So we don't get our water from Rogers. We don't get our water from Maple Grove. We don't get our water from Champlin. We get our water from the ground underneath our yards. So, the third thing is, I got this dinky little map in the mail from City of Dayton. It's really hard to see, especially when you're old like me. But I did notice that there's a little teeny tiny green line running from a holding pond to my front yard. You can't hardly see it. It's real easy to overlook. And the city didn't tell me anything about that. I found it myself. Mr. Dehn didn't say anything to me. Mr. Seaval didn't say anything to me. Nobody said anything. So I did email Mr. Seaval, and he said it's for drainage. Drainage where? Is this holding pond going to drain into my yard? Do you think my yard's going to drain into the holding pond underneath 121? There's no communication. In 52 years, we have never had standing water in our front yard. So you tell me, why do we have to have a pipe from the drainage pond into my yard? No one has ever talked to us about anything regarding that project, not one word. I feel there should have been at least a couple of meetings with the residents across the road from this area and Mr. Seaval and Mr. Dehn. The only meetings were with the 6 houses down the street. And why do you think it's okay to let a developer run a pipe into my front yard? I don't understand it. Maybe you can tell me, but I don't understand it. I think this is just kind of showing how the city is in cahoots with the developers. They don't tell the citizens anything. So, thank you. We need to communicate better with the citizens.
Evening, guys.
Evening.
Keith Grover, 100 in Fernbrook. I think you'll know where I live. Some of the issues that keep popping up, and I want to commend Tom for doing some of the things that he's been doing. I mean, this isn't a hate Tom thing. It's got nothing to do with that. This is about our quality of life in the homes that we've lived in for 50, 60 years. And looking at specifically across the street from us, we know there's going to be houses out there. You guys need to decide the best way to let people put houses in there. I have a real problem with small lots. They've done something about that. I still think they're too small, but then I think my lot is too small, right? And it's 150 feet by 250 feet. That's for you guys to figure out. You all know how we feel about those small lots. We don't like you deviating from the plan that the city has. The other thing that jumps out at me is noise, you know, and getting back to whether we have a commercial piece of property there or don't have a commercial piece of property. I think it's great that Tom took that off his plan for now, but I still see that in the rearview mirror. You know, whether it's next year or the year after that, I didn't plan on moving anywhere. I'm in my 70s. I planned on living in that house, you know, till I didn't have any place else to worry about living, okay? I don't know if that's going to be possible because you're going to change our quality of life there drastically. The noise coming from a piece of commercial property is way different than it would be if I was looking at neighbors across the street. I have neighbors to my sides. I never hear them unless we're both outside and we talk to each other. I would have envisioned houses across the street to be the same way, you know, that I don't hear from them. They're far enough away. The other issue with commercial property is the light pollution. I've heard nothing from you guys or even questioning them when they were talking about commercial property there and whether or not the light from that property that's going to be lit up, commercial always is 24/7, whether that's going to be, you know, shining in my living room window or my neighbor's living room window. Nobody talks about that. You can talk about when you're talking about a commercial piece like a gas station or a convenience store, I worry about crime. I mean, I grew up out here in Dayton. It wasn't something we thought about when we were kids, but now, if you watch the news, how many crimes, how many carjackings, how many robberies, how many card skimming, scam outfits run from those convenience/gas stations? I mean, that bothers me. What are we doing about that? Is that even a consideration when we're talking about putting commercial property in the middle of a housing project? The water runoff. My wife talked about that line that's running across the road. You guys need to help us with that. You sent us the map. We want to know what it's actually telling us. The holding pond is across the street from us. There's no ditch in front of my house to drain water from to a holding pond. There's no ditch in front of my house. The road comes down, it's sloped right into my yard. The water that runs into my yard runs around both ends of my houses and between our neighbors' houses, and it goes into a drainage creek that's behind our houses. It's been like that since before houses were there. It was a farm field, and it was farmed back in the 50s. That's where the water runs. So there's nothing to drain from our side to the west. The water doesn't run that way. Never has, and I don't think you can even make it run that way. Can't make it run uphill unless you know something I don't know. The speed limit issue that you guys talked about, and that's been brought up here before, the speed limit on 121. It's too fast. It's too fast for the amount of cars that are on that road. It's too fast for the access points that are along that road. Like I've told you guys before, there's 60-some access points from the southern edge of border of Dayton to Pineview Lane. If you drive through there, they're just access points all along there. And there's really no safe place along that road to drive the speed limit. You put 55 on there, that's not what people drive. We all know that. There's people go by there 65, 70, 80 miles an hour. I think they had the police department had their sign up there for a while, and I went out and talked to one of the reserve officers, and I think they had somebody clocked at close to 100 miles an hour through there. That's insane. I mean, again, with all those access points, and now we're putting all these kids into the mix from all these new houses that are coming out there. To me, it's just scary. We've lost children in the neighborhood on 121 before. It's up to you guys to help make that safer so it doesn't happen again. Lee talked about the garbage. I'm on garbage detail 2-3 times a week, and they're not even building across the street from me. It's off to the south of me. How that stuff gets from point A to point B is beyond me, but it ends up in my front yard, along my trees, along my fence, and it's not people throwing stuff out on the road. I'm used to picking up a cigarette pack or a beer can or some stupid thing like that. That's not the issue. It's all construction material. It's wrap, it's shingle packages. It's all coming from those construction jobs that are over at Sundance, and that's all ending up in my yard, not just my yard. Like Lee said, it's all up and down the whole road. It blows into the park, it blows into the church, it blows into the hay field that Jesse Young owns that I cut hay for him on at 112th in Fernbrook. There's just tons of garbage, and I don't ever see us doing anything about that. Sure, we pick it up once in a while when somebody calls in a complaint, but I think we need to be a little more proactive on that stuff. The speed limit thing, there's one thing I want to mention on that. The patent answer, whenever we bring that up as well, it's a county road, we don't have anything to do with it. I think we do have something to do with it because we live here, we elect the county officials that direct the people that engineer that road. It's not impossible to have a 40-mile-an-hour speed limit on that road. And the answer is if you just drive the road now, you'll find that. If you go down to County Road 30 in Maple Grove, it's 40 miles an hour all the way to County Road 81. And then it picks up, once you get past the territorial roundabout, it picks back up to 55 miles an hour. And it's 55 miles an hour all the way around to Pineview. You go down the hill in Pineview, again, in Dayton, it drops back down to 40 miles an hour. So somehow, on the southern end of Fernbrook Lane, or 121, they managed to drop the speed limit down to 40. And on the north end of it, they dropped it down to 40. My question is, why in the heck can't it be that all the way through there? Getting more specifically to the issue at hand here with the development. Every time I come to one of these meetings, I think we take 2 steps forward and for me, 3 steps back. I'm looking at the traffic routing from this new development. And none of it's going out on 117th. That has an improved intersection, has left turn lanes, it has right turn lanes, it has a straight through lane. It's not good. It probably should be a roundabout or a stoplight there, but it's way better than what you're looking at on 113th. There's nothing there. There's no right turn, no left turn, and really there's no room there for it to start with. So taking that out of the equation is a good thing. But to tell me today that we're going to route all of that development traffic, the trucks, and all of the cars and all the new people that not only live in the Sundance on the south side of 113th, but now is another 100 and whatever the heck homes it is on the north side, that for the next several years, we're gonna route that traffic down to 113th? That's just crazy. 113th, when that development starts, that road should be blocked. If they want to get in and out of that development, they go up to Rush Creek Parkway that has a more controlled intersection, although it's designed horribly. At least it has turn lanes so that people can get off the road when they're turning to get off and not have somebody run them over from the back. And if you get up to 117th, I just mentioned that, there are some turn lanes there that make that intersection a lot safer too. But to route that traffic on 113th, that's not going to work. I think last week when we came down to a council meeting, there was another accident right in front of our house because somebody was making a left turn to go down towards Sundance. And it wasn't a little vehicle, it was a huge commercial garbage truck making a left turn, sitting there with his turn signal on. The first car behind him stopped, the second car didn't, and it hit the car behind the truck. Totaled both cars, they both went away on the truck. Luckily, the young man driving the car didn't get hurt, and the young lady with her two little kids in the back seat of her car did not get hurt. But that's not going to be the case all the time. We luck out, we keep lucking out. We just need your help on this. You know, if you need us to go out and get petitions signed to send to the county, that's fine. I mean, we can do that. I'll volunteer to do that. But it just seems like we get no leadership from the city on that subject. We need some help. Thanks.
Thank you, Keith.
Do we want to go to the person?
Yeah, let's go to the person online.
Sure. All right, Stacy, if you can hear us, please state your name and address for the record, and feel free to go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Last time we had trouble. Say that again, Stacy Smith Donley, 11431 Fernbrook Lane. I'm the second house up on those 6 houses. I guess I didn't receive a new updated plan, this updated plan. I can't quite tell, but the path remains. Can anyone give me feedback on that?
You're talking about the path behind your house?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Well, I'm happy to hear that that's staying because that's really important to us. I just want to, I guess, kind of, I can't think of the word, it's been a long week, long day. I guess, in terms of, the roundabout, I don't, and, the businesses, I'm not a fan of leaving the businesses lot undeveloped because I'm not quite sure if we have any guarantees that, our concerns around the light and the traffic and the possible pollution to our water, even though we might be, getting water from another source. Not all of us will be, it sounds like. So I'm just wondering about that. And then, Tom had said that we'll try to make the roundabout more southerly. And what guarantees do we have about we'll try? That just seems kind of murky, and it would be nice to have that reflected in the plan, because as it's currently presented, it looks like it's still very close to our house and the house southern of us. And my husband made a good point that, what happens, I was just, that new roundabout that's at the end of Fernbrook close to 81, you see you see people all the time, on an icy day, just flying off into the off the road right there. So what happens when they're flying off the road into our house? Because that roundabout is just so close. And so I really would like that reflected in a plan before we're approving this. I don't know if this was true, but on one of your slides it said that there was the plan submitted in mid-February, which I'm guessing this is, hasn't been fully reviewed, so I don't know what that means. But there was like recommendation to send it, to approve this plan with, to let it with like some pending before you approve it for the city council. I don't know what exactly that all meant, but I don't think we should approve this plan without it being the plan that we're actually going to be utilizing. Which maybe that's just my ignorance around like the process and whatnot. But so yeah, if someone could address those questions, that'd be lovely. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else here to speak on this topic?
My name is Kathy Powers, and I live at 11461 Fernbrook Lane. And I've been sitting back there and listening to all the conversations that have been going on. And the vast majority of it seems like this roundabout is a major issue. Maybe we should think about a roundabout some other place on Fernbrook Lane. 117th, I know there's been talk about that. But there's so much disruption on the 114th. And with, and I do live on one of those 6 houses there, but my concern is, like Stacy was saying, and Hernandez that live on the 2 south end houses. I don't know how you're going to make that work. And even moving it southward, I just don't see that is going to make it work from an engineering standpoint. I just can't see how that's working. And maybe there's a better way of putting a roundabout someplace else. And I mean, I'd love to see a roundabout up on Rush Creek and Elm Creek, where the church is. I'd love to see that happen. And I think it'd be better to have one there and one on 117th, rather than having one on 117th, and then you move up a little bit, and now you got one on 114th. And there's so much going on 114th that it doesn't seem like it's realistic to put one there. So I just would like you people to really sit back and think about a better plan and help Dehn with it. Maybe there's another way to do this instead of, what he's proposing. Because I just don't see that being really workable. Thank you.
Thank you.
I really just have a couple comments, and one is to the Grover. So we're not draining our pond into their front yard. I think it's just seeing some survey lines that may have just been.
There's a catch basin that goes from west to east, or east to west.
Yeah, but I think it running down. I think it's supposed off the plans down. It's going to go to the north of that, where the natural the waterway is already.
I think
there.
the plans are showing future curb and gutter.
Yeah.
On that section, right, they're showing future improvements to Fernbrook Lane, which include curb and gutter. Curb and gutter needs to be drained, right, so there's probably a proposed low point there to bring that water across the street.
Yeah, but it isn't going into there yet.
It's not going, no, it is draining.
That line there is the curb and gutter from up.
The east curb line's going to drain over to the
down,
pond.
but it goes all into the pond and then goes over.
That's what it looks like to me.
Yeah. Trying to pick up the phone, and then, I think, right, probably roundabouts at all 3 spots would be ideal, but at 114th, I mean, we still have the 114th road that needs to get out 113th. I do know from our discussions before about the thing I had with the county is when we did Sundance Greens is that's what, they wanted the intersections to align. I'm the one to propose the roundabout because I do agree, right? I mean, I think that's the best thing to help slow down traffic. I would reiterate with everybody, and if somehow, that traffic could be lowered all the way, I think it'd be great, but I just wanted to try to touch the drainage. Yeah, we wouldn't go dumping it, water where it wasn't.
Yeah.
Tom, can you clarify, one of the previous slides from staff was that there was a roundabout that would be funded through this project. Yeah, can we clarify which intersection was that? Was
this the slide here?
Well, the one that we have,
back. Keep going. There was a slide that I mentioned, when you had mentioned to Jason that it was a $2 million roundabout, whatever it might be. What intersection was that?
That was 114.
That's what I thought.
114th, yeah, that's
Correct.
the one, I mean, I think you're gonna wait for the county to fund it, right?
Right. So, yeah, so DCM Farms Public Benefit, 114th roundabout.
Yeah.
Is that a suggestion that the 114th Ave roundabout is constructed as a part of this development and funded as a part of this development?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And then 117th would be partially funded through this development, a contribution towards that roundabout, right?
Yeah, and I don't, you know, what's that amount, right?
Yeah.
Land and everything, so, but I mean.
I just wanted to get that, I wanted to get that clear.
There's a huge amount, right?
Yeah.
That normally is on a county road that is way more benefit than just our project.
Yeah.
And then I think there is, if you do look on the Brayburn, development, they can get out to 117th through there. I mean, we can't exit 117th, right, because it's too close to the intersection. But that's all I had.
Since you're up here, Tom, just because we keep hearing a lot of comments, and I get that there's a timing issue that people are trying to understand, like how it's going to impact of when roundabouts are going to be constructed. When you, in best case scenario, say you start moving dirt in the spring, when's the first home even going to get built? It's probably not till fall, late fall.
I would imagine if it's fall, it's up by the park. You know,
Yeah.
everywhere we have is right up by the park is where we'd work in the first phase, those 65-foot wide lots.
Yep.
But there's a good chance, there's definitely nobody living there this year, and even
Yes.
if any
Correct.
houses get in there, you know, if I could get the I mean, my goal is, weather permitting, we can have streets in before freeze up.
Right. And so the goal that the city, people on council, and the PC need to figure out too is how to manage all that timing of all these events. Because, you know, as you're moving dirt, you're figuring out the 114th roundabout.
Yeah.
As that gets figured out, if it gets shifted or not shifted, that's when we solve it. You know, there's obviously going to be this, my biggest concern is the uncertainty is what happens if those two homes just get cut off with access and there's no 117th access. And I don't really know how to answer that until probably a year from now when we know what it looks like.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's hard to give people guarantees, but I understand where they're coming from, but that's the hardest challenge I'm having.
And I mean, I think we've talked and love to get, you know, with the county as soon as possible, you know?
Yeah.
And I mean, if somehow we could figure out how to get it done this year, I mean, I think we're just making the assumption nothing happens quick at the county, but if they could have a plan and that's the first thing in the spring, I mean, that's, you know, it actually helps the project too, you know what I mean? Just,
Right.
So.
Thank you. All right. Is there anyone else here to speak on this topic? If not, it is 7:28. We are going to close the public hearing. Before we get into discussion, I think a couple of these got checked off. But just a couple of questions to staff. What is left to review? What is incomplete? That's partially maybe what you want to get to versus what's not in this packet.
Sure. So, for one, this is a planned unit development, and so it's expected that there's going to be flexibility in lot width. So I'm not looking at, you know, say lot one is that 62 feet wide, no, it's going to be something else, and that's up to the commission and the council to say that something else is good enough. So kind of what I'm looking for is, does the planning commission want to change anything? On the review, I know we're still working through the engineering review. We're missing a landscaping plan. So there's some smaller detail things that it's probably not as big of a concern, but it's, if there's a list of things to check, this isn't checked yet.
Okay. Okay. And yeah, that's all I've got for staff. Any other questions for staff before we have a discussion? All right, well,
Will we see the planting plan before?
Only
or
if
at
you
any point?
table it.
Okay.
So I guess with that, I would ask the commission providing a recommendation, so specifically what I'm thinking of is if there's any desirable landscaping along Fernbrook.
And I will just note too, for people's understanding, the last plan that was provided had a landscape plan, but with the revisions, there wasn't an updated landscaping plan that was provided. And just a quick summary on that, the landscape plan showed a significant amount of buffering along what is to be the new alignment of 113. And then I believe that there was a note in the last staff report related to less than 10 tree shortage on the buffer requirements along Fernbrook in the northeast area. So minor revisions were required from that last one, and with this new plan, we'll expect to see that.
Okay. Well, it seems like the first question up here for the planning commission members is, where's everyone's comfort level with moving forward before we have more discussion? And it can be part of your discussion, I guess, too.
I don't think the missing items are critical to the way I would look at the application as far as landscape plan and whatnot.
Do we have like a majority that are in concurrence on that?
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
Yeah, I think if it's just the landscape plan, I'm not going to say just the landscape plan, but I have faith in the staff that this development will meet our minimum requirements and maybe exceed those minimum requirements or push for that. Ultimately, this gets approved by the council, so we could certainly have that review at the council level as well to make sure that landscape plan is adequate.
Okay. All right. You know, Jeff, you already mentioned to the applicant, I think the changes that were made are very positive. I kind of view this as two types of developments. And when talking to staff, you know, the average lot width outside of the northeast corner is 66 feet. And we only have a 62-foot minimum. So really the question in my brain is, you know, for this deviation and the public benefit, is it worth it? Are we okay with the alley homes? I don't love a 40-foot product, but they do have a place and they do have a market. And it's it's the first one in Dayton. I'm so happy the developer really cut down that number of lots, so I think it's more appropriate. So I don't have a problem with the lot width, lot size, and I think the public benefit is pretty important with the roundabout at 114th. And there's a lot of timing issues involved and a lot of uncertainty that I think that those out there that are directly impacted with that access, you should know that it's on everyone's brains to make sure we do the best we can to manage it and have you have normal access.
Yeah, I'd concur. I mean, the roundabout should move as far south as we can get it, away from those homes reasonably. I don't see a negative impact on future commercial or whatever that parcel might be. A little bit of alignment on 114th on the east side that would have to happen, but while I'm also not a huge fan of the small lots, it does provide the density that Met Council requires. You kind of need to have that to have some of the larger lots. I do like the street facing front of houses with the main street and then the buffer before Fernbrook, so we're not just looking at backs of houses along Fernbrook. And if we maintain the same quality that Sundance and the development south of Dehn's has had along the Fernbrook there, and we continue that up here, I think that's going to be great.
Yeah, I think if there's a spot to have higher density, it's tucked up against Fernbrook, right? I think the way you had presented it in that the rest of the lots get to be larger because of it. For me, I think that's a reasonable spot to try this product type. It provides a variety of housing choices for the market, which is important as well.
Yeah, I agree mostly with everything said right now. A couple concerns I have. Number one, and I don't know if we have a minimum standard requirement that we could get a hold of through Hennepin County for roundabouts and lighting on roundabouts. Anybody driving through the roundabout on Fernbrook and close to 81, it's lit up like an airport, right? So I was shocked the first time I went through there. I think I was able to see like into people's yards because of how bright that's lit up. And I get that that's a temporary thing, but having that kind of set up around any of these roundabouts up here might be pretty critical as far as the light intensity and light pollution as well. I know there's a comment made about us not addressing noise or light pollution, and I do think that is critical also to look at. I think we're premature in that right now because there's no definite plan for that outlot, but that's certainly something that's going to be on my mind when commercial development goes in there as far as what's the type of noise that could be made there, how are we going to screen it, what's the lighting standards look like. I know that we made mention of our light and noise ordinance might have some holes in it that need to be looked at potentially, so that's something that I think we should continue to work on. The other question I have, and I don't want to throw a huge monkey wrench in this, but what is the potential, or is there even any way, or does it even make sense if in the narrow lots there, is there any kind of way of punching one of those streets to the north to 117th? So take that western street. I know there's a holding pond there, which is probably sized accordingly on this plan. But if you take that western street and you punch it north to 117th, that would give all of those properties the ability to go north to 117th instead of meandering south through the entire development to try to get to 113th, where all those people, those residents, I don't know the name of that street there, are going to see all that traffic coming down through there, back and forth. People take the path of least resistance, and when they find their route and their routine, they stick to it, right? So once they find out that this is the fastest way I could get to Fernbrook, they're going to use it every day over and over and over and over again until something comes up where they have to change that pattern. I know that throws a huge monkey wrench in things, or potentially does, but it would alleviate some traffic concerns on 114th. It would add some traffic concerns on 117th and intersections and so on and so forth, but it might be a good way of solving an issue and helping alleviate some of those other concerns that might come up through this development.
Yeah, feasibly, yes, it could be physically connected, but the proximity to the Fernbrook intersection would be more trouble than I think would want to be tolerated for that. So the location that was selected in Brayburn East was strategic, if you will, with the spacing along there.
If there's no more discussion, I guess I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to recommend approval. Do we do it all at one time, do you think? Zoning map?
I think we can.
Planned unit development and preliminary plat of DCM Farms.
Is that all of, so you said, what did you list there?
Zoning map amendment, planned unit development, and preliminary plat.
Second.
All those in favor? We're going to do a roll call. We'll start this time.
Aye.
Paul?
Aye.
Myself, aye.
An aye.
Motion carries 4-0. This will go to the city council on...
We don't have a date, so we need to complete our review, and then it will go forward to the council.
Okay. Perfect. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on to item number B, concept plan at 17051 117th Avenue North, Oppidan.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the Planning Commission. Tonight, you're asked to review a concept plan for an industrial speculative building. The property here is located on the east side of Dayton Parkway roundabout and south of 117th Avenue, directly east of the Cubes building. The overall site is 3.24 acres, and the first phase of development consists of roughly 15 acres. There's a mix of land use guidance from the comp plan consisting of industrial in the purple, business park in the light purple, and then commercial in the red. Currently, one of the properties is zoned I-1, which was in relation to the development of the Cubes project and the the extension of Dayton Parkway in that area. And this is in the current staging plan for the urban service area. All right, so here is a cut from the site plan here showing the concept development, and the outlined area in red is the identified first phase. This office, it includes office space, warehouse, and distribution. The building is 200,000 square feet. The plan also includes loading docks for semi-trucks on the north side of the building. The initial elevation shows 17 dock doors initially and 39 knockout panels for future doors, totaling 56. There's vehicle parking on the south side of the building, and they're currently, based on the plan, there was an unidentified number of parking spaces proposed. The applicant has indicated that they do not wish to pursue a planned unit development in this regard, so the expectation would be that they would meet the parking standards for warehouse and distribution, including the office space. Also included here is 38,000 square feet, roughly, area of outdoor storage, and that is inclusive of any areas to navigate or maneuver around the outdoor storage area. And here's an aerial image of the site looking south. Just looking at the site plan and the proposed building layout regarding building setbacks, as you can see, all of the proposed locations show compliance to what is required in the I-1 district, which is what this is assumed to be rezoned to at the time of them coming back for preliminary plat application. And here's just another table regarding the parking setbacks. Also in compliance. And then here's just some detail on site coverage. The impervious surface coverage proposed is 69%. The building footprint coverage was 29.9%, and the proposed structure height is 37 feet with a clear height of 32. Some considerations through the review that staff identified, and just to preface the discussion, this is for informal feedback to the applicant. No formal action will be taken tonight on this item, though a public hearing will be held to get some added discussion from residents who wish to provide them. The parking areas, as I mentioned before, are subject to the ordinance, the parking ordinance related to office, warehouse, and distribution, and including the accessory semi-trailer parking. Access and circulation consideration should be given to whether the proposed access from the north on 117th Avenue is needed at the time of this initial phase, or if the proposed one initial access off of that last roundabout leg on the southeast of Dayton Parkway would suffice for this 200,000 square foot building. And the outdoor storage area shall be designed, excuse me, and screened in accordance with the zoning ordinance section provided. General landscaping shall comply with the zoning ordinance as well, and because Dayton Parkway is identified as a major road in the future here, a 35-foot landscape buffer shall be provided on the property that is consistent with our buffer requirements to major roadways. The building orientation, consideration by the applicant should be taken to the building layout in general, and if there's any possibility that the building could be rotated so the vehicle parking faces north towards the what is proposed future commercial area, including the wetland that faces. And that also includes reorientation of the office area within the building. Right now, the office area is proposed to be on the southwest side of the building. Staff had provided a recommendation that be, I guess, swapped to the northeast area, so it faces Dayton Parkway, the wetland area, and then the remaining commercial area. And that would also allow for the dock doors in the truck area to face the existing industrial park that is 113th Avenue. The applicant also did provide this sketch related to a potential realignment of the Dayton Parkway Road within this area. Basically, the concept here that they provided was to acknowledge that they would not be in favor of such realignment of this area, as it would obviously not make the south portion of these properties developable. So they essentially, that was the exhibit that they provided to show. Just talking amongst staff, preliminary estimates of only realigning the roadway and utilities be expected to exceed $10 million, and that doesn't include any necessary right-of-way acquisitions to the east or future improvements beyond that realignment. And also another major factor that was considered was the need for the Cubes building's newest occupant, States Manufacturing, to utilize that north access right here onto Dayton Parkway for their services. Here's just a list of future applications that staff would expect to see at time of preliminary plat. Not only the preliminary plat, but the rezoning application. Comprehensive plan amendment for the land use designation, which is specific to that commercial area in the northwest. The business park and industrial land use designation both allow for warehouse and distribution, so the first phase of construction would otherwise be considered consistent with what the comp plan shows in that area. There would be required conditional use permit for the outdoor storage area, and then of course a standard site plan review. And all of these applications listed above can be applied for concurrently. And just again to reiterate, the role of the Planning Commission is to review the concept, discuss it, and offer input and any desired changes or improvements for the applicant to consider. Also hold a public hearing for the plan. Notice was sent out to surrounding properties within a quarter mile of this area. And all comments are advisory only and non-binding, and no action will be taken at this time. And with that, I'll open it up to questions.
Thank you. Any questions to staff?
What was the impetus of the exhibit showing the revised alignment there? Was that staff-driven? Does staff feel like there is still a possibility of that extension occurring, even after the discussion with City Council in June about the alignment of the regional roadways through that area?
I can't remember which months we've had discussions. So we had a previous workshop with the Council and the Planning Commission, which the majority direction from the Council and the Commission was to explore moving Dayton Parkway to the east. And then we had I think that was the June discussion of what is the history of Dayton Parkway or the Dayton Parkway alignment. And then the conversation essentially stopped until there was an applicant that was in this area, and here we are. So this is the point where a decision does need to be made if Dayton Parkway is going to follow the current alignment or if it's going to move.
I mean, I would argue it's maybe a little bit too late since infrastructure's already built, but we can get there. I just want to know the history a little bit more there.
Is the applicant present that would like to come up and?
Good evening. My name is Jay Moore with Oppidan Investment Company, 400 Water Street, Excelsior, Minnesota.
And Mark Anderson, civil engineer with Sambatech, representing Oppidan, and we worked on the concept plans along with Mohagan Hanson Architects. So appreciate your time tonight. Of course, our greatest interest tonight is to get feedback on this plan, good or bad, support or not, so that Oppidan can make decisions on whether to move forward or not. So we're available to answer questions and be a part of the dialogue as needed.
I'll start out with a couple questions. First question, just what's your, when staff is suggesting flipping the building, do you guys have a preference or response to that? How that would maybe impact things, good or bad?
Yeah, we of course don't have a design on this site yet. We just have a site plan and some initial layouts. So more details to come, but you know, the large pond / wetland in the middle is of course the low side of the site. And so we've orientated the building with the truck court, which is also the low side of the building project. And then the car parking is on the south, which is approximately 4 feet higher than the truck dock elevation. So the natural grades on the site tend to tell us we should have the truck court on the north. But we also understand that screening of truck courts and you know, the visual sight lines from Dayton Parkway are important. So the landscape requirements do require a 35-foot wide buffer along Dayton Parkway. That can help screen the truck court, as well as noted here by the image, additional screening near the truck court. So we're certainly willing to look at it as the design moves forward and we've got more information, but those are our initial thoughts on why it's orientated this way.
Okay. This is not really related to the industrial, which I understand is phase one, but I'm very concerned about 130,000 square feet of commercial space with the access you guys are showing. So it only has one right in, right out on Dayton Parkway, and then it's got the full access up in the northeast corner on 117th. That's a lot of square feet of commercial to only have one egress point. And it seems to me that the road coming off the roundabout should be extended all the way along the south end of the property. And not only does that help the city with adjacent development to the east someday, because we have a roundabout and direct access to Dayton Parkway, it should be connected, in my opinion. And if that road extended all the way across the bottom, then you could shoot up a road north if you really want to put all that commercial up there.
You want to go? I mean,
Yeah, we'll probably both comment on this, but the commercial area, of course, isn't an area that Oppidan is pursuing at this time. They don't intend to. So the landowner may sell to others, or who knows, may even develop themselves. This site plan was the basis of the EAW that was prepared, I think, somewhere in the order of 2 years ago. And it's not to say that there couldn't be additional access off of 117th to help facilitate the flow of traffic for the commercial development. That's something that could be looked at. But I think it's fairly clear that the access off of Dayton Parkway is right in, right out only with the divided median. So it is somewhat limited there, but certainly how that commercial area develops, it's going to have to certainly look at access, and it might be significantly different than what's shown there today.
It seems like this is our chance to get the access right, though.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why, and I know we've been talking about the intersection spacing, and I'm guessing that that's, in fact, I measured it, it's close to where we'd want the spacing anyway, so I don't think there's any other ways to solve it, to get access to it, other than coming from the roundabout.
Yeah.
And I get that's going to completely shift the plan.
Well,
and one thing I thought about, and I don't know if you guys have looked at it, but why not, I understand bigger buildings are more economically make sense. But if you chopped it up in the smaller buildings and had them going vertical, north-south on the map, you could get almost the same amount of square footage, I think, if you did that and still have room for a road coming through. And part of me says that why not look at the whole site as industrial too? I mean, it's going to be a tough site to access for commercial, period.
Yeah, the commercial vitality really depends on the future extension of Dayton Parkway.
Well, it depends on access as much as anything.
Certainly, and 117th French Lake Road. The south roadway alignment that we're referring to certainly makes it difficult, if not impossible, to put an industrial building on the south portion of the property due to the roadway itself, the right-of-way and setbacks. And I've also worked with the landowner client here with the EAW and so on, and he's of the mindset he already donated right-of-way for Dayton Parkway. A significant amount of his land was granted for that already, so he's not interested in cutting up more for more road right-of-way on his property.
Hayden, do you have a picture of the road that, from the roundabout that's gonna go down to the right?
Yes.
Darren, would you suggest then if there's not a road to connect, to kind of loop the lot, that doing an all industrial kind of site would benefit better?
Yeah,
or work
the
better?
northwest
'Cause
corner could maybe become commercial someday, but
Yeah.
you know, you just took 130,000 square to be commercial down to, you know, something a lot less that can maybe handle just one access point and a right in, right out.
So I think there has been some analysis of the road connections. Maybe, Jason, if you're willing to comment on them, that might help us a little bit in understanding what the options have been.
Yeah, the primary objective of that, I'll say unused leg of the roundabout is to connect and reroute the access for 113th, with the thought being as Dayton Parkway grows and becomes busier and that intersection at 81 is upgraded, the connection at 113th would not be feasible anymore, or for users to make the egress and ingress movements. So an alternate connection point was needed. We did look, or we started with what's shown on the screen today. When we weren't making process, as a reserve, if you will, we were holding as an alternative what was mentioned, that road extending east and then south and coming into the, I'll call it the east terminus of 113th, creating almost a horseshoe, if you will, along there. So that was an alternative. We have been working with the property owner from which the right-of-way would be required for, as it is shown. We're actually in process just finalizing a plat for his property to create that tract to be purchased for the right-of-way use in the future. So that is well along. Not that it has to be used for it, it could be rerouted, and that could always be vacated or used for other purposes if found necessary or beneficial. But we have moved forward with the plan as shown, with the thought being as long as this is secured as our alternate connection to 113th, the road to the east would not be necessary, at least for those purposes.
Yeah.
If there was reasons to go east for other reasons,
Yeah.
other purposes, that could be discussed.
And just so everyone's clear, the reason to go east is the 78 acres between East French Lake Road and this development. We've had lots of discussions on land use, and the current land use plan still follows Dayton Parkway, and Dayton Parkway shifted. I just think it's short-sighted not to connect that area to this roundabout. I think it creates a lot of opportunity for the city when something happens versus trying to figure out how to, someday when people sell their, because everything on East French Lake Road on both sides are in current staging. So those people could be selling their land, and there are conversations with some people about what they might do with it. And so it's going to be in our lap sooner than later, and we need to figure out how is that area going to be accessed and what's it going to become. And from a city perspective, not an applicant perspective, we need to do a better job there, and we still haven't addressed it. And it makes hard evaluating the site because, you know, if that all became low-density residential or medium-density residential on the right, it's a different story than if it becomes industrial. And that's where I'm coming from. Jay and Mark, is that there's a decent chance that east could become industrial, and that's why I think it should be connected to the roundabout.
Could it connect to 113th? Won't the roundabout come down this way and what?
You're gonna, you could do it that way, but it's, yeah, to me, you'd still run that road, and you could even still drop that road down, well, unless the spacing's too tight with the intersection, they drop it down safely. And, you know, just from this concept plan's perspective, I guess I'm struggling not of saying that I get that that industrial building would work perfect there, but I think we just punted on the whole rest of the site. And that's why I know that you guys are focused on the industrial, I get that, makes sense, but I'm a little focused on, well, we gotta solve the north half, how it's gonna get accessed.
Yeah, there was a traffic study as part of the EAW for this, so that's something that we could take a look at as well. And see what the.
And like I said, so that building's running east-west now. If you flipped them, you could still get quite a bit of square footage of building in there. Granted, they're smaller buildings, but I'm guessing that this spec building, you don't know if it's one tenant or 3 or 4 tenants. And so the smaller buildings might still work. It just, you're eliminating the one big tenant now.
Doesn't work financially. Just doesn't. It's triple the cost probably.
Yeah, well, I'm a real estate appraiser and I know it works, so it's not triple the cost.
Okay.
But it costs more and it's more difficult, I get it.
Yeah, I think the other challenge for this particular parcel size is the dimension to the east of the wetland/pond area is not enough.
It's
to
a tough
fit a
site.
standard
It's a very
truck
tough site.
load. So, and even the north side, if that wanted to be industrial, I don't believe the dimension is sufficient there either. So the only one that is south of the wetland pond that, and it's tight, even in the south position. So if the road were to continue to the east, I think it would rule out industrial on this site.
It would shift the building types for sure, and whether that is feasible for you or even the next market participant, because it's difficult. Well, that's the comments I
You know,
have.
just from a land development, you know, this portion of the southern site is the most valuable, right? And so that's,
absolutely.
the current owner is, you know, trying to maximize that value, and we're trying to maximize our return for
Yep.
what size building can come in here. And so, you know, from
Yep.
a feasibility, from what we think is a logical use, it could be 1 tenant, it could be 2, but we don't think it's 20.
Right.
You know,
Yes, absolutely.
this is what we're trying to solve for, and there's demand for this type of building in your city. So this is what we would like to see be accomplished, if possible. That's why we're here.
I understand the grading issues of trying to flip the building 180. Makes a lot of logical sense. It's a little unfortunate to put the front of your building kind of facing away from any kind of entry or visibility for any tenant signage, and just the aesthetic of the building. You can plant a whole bunch of trees along Dayton Parkway and it's still going to see the building, right? I mean, you're going to be still smaller than the cubes across the street, but it'd be nice to.
It's something we're certainly willing to look
Yeah.
at once we get, full grade design and so on, how that
Yeah,
works.
see what the cost impacts and feasibility impacts of that are. I'd appreciate that.
Right.
I think regardless, if there's anything you do to that west facade to just make it look a little bit more like the front of your building, or just some more windows along there, would be really nice, just to open it up. I think even, I think Tom's in the back corner there, like corner houses, like make a corner house look like a corner house. Don't just make a corner house look like an individual house with no windows on the side, right? Like, make the corner of your building look like the corner of the building. That's what everybody sees pulling into your property, for tenants, visitors, whatever, right? So, address that side as much as you address the front face. I prefer integral colored concrete with an acid etch or a sandblast instead of painting any day. I think it just looks more natural to the material. It's a longer lasting product. You never have to paint it or do anything to maintain it. It's just the precast will last forever. Painted precast will need to be painted in the future, and it just doesn't quite look as nice. So if you can look into that as a feasibility, I'd appreciate that. I think just because of the scale of the site, and especially if this stays the same orientation, do you pull the signage down into the metal panel bump ups at the doors? So it's a little bit more pedestrian scale because you're not seeing this from a long distance. And maybe give that kind of bumped up metal panel a little bit more of a presence and a purpose. If it also hosts the signage for your tenants and gets it a little bit more over the doors. Otherwise, I think nice job on the entries, adding in a little bit of, maybe it's some kind of wood feature there or metal panel with the little canopies. That's very helpful. I like windows, but I know there's cost to it, so bigger, taller, whatever it might be is always nice, but I think the rhythm of windows that you have will provide a lot of daylight into the building, which will be good. A little surprised to see more along the truck side than along the front face. Maybe it's because you have them all down low on the front, but that's kind of all the kind of architectural things at this point. Is the question so if this property were to develop with just this one building, you've got the access off the roundabout in the south, the any kind of connection up to French Lake would not occur at this point, right? So your only access would be off the roundabout for all truck and car traffic?
Yeah, the staff report had indicated they recommend access to the north for emergency vehicles.
Mm-hmm.
Actually considered gating it so that the trucks don't go that way, but for emergency access, just to have 2 points.
Yep, I would agree with that. I don't know if there's anything with that entry drive, just trying to separate cars and trucks the best possible. Who knows how heavy truck traffic, depending on your tenants. You might have, half of it might be a baseball training facility or something, right? And you have 0 trucks, or you might be a warehouse where you're just running trucks all day. But that's always a cause of concern when you have trucks and cars.
I think you always have to plan for the worst possible scenario, or the most intensive possible scenario in any building, right? So that's where traffic counts and accessibility. And how many loading docks are there?
I think it was 56.
That's a lot of loading docks, right?
At least 17 of them were identified as the ones that would go in right away.
Correct, right. So, obviously the potential of this building is pretty heavily industrial use. We should make sure that all those connections are planned for accordingly. So, sorry, Paul.
No, that's fine. I think just, if nothing else changes with the entry drive or whatever, do you just make that entry just a little bit wider with a boulevard or something just to help divide those? Obviously, truck turning all has to work and be functional.
Yeah.
But
even though the back of the building shows those punch-out panels, this is meant for office warehouse. So it's usually not like right across the street at the Cubes. That is complete distribution. That's where all the trucks, and they have them every 14 feet. This very unlikely that they would be more than 15 or 20 doors max. Is what we envision. Although it's hard to totally predict that, but that's the likely scenario.
Yeah. Sometimes when people see these really big buildings, they think they're naturally going to be just warehousing distribution, but these buildings are flexible. They can be manufacturers, they can be warehousing. And the challenge with spec buildings is making sure that what we approve, you've provided the flexibility to meet the parking and stuff like that, where, for example, that outdoor storage could become parking if a big manufacturer came in.
I don't have anything else.
Yeah, I think all the other commissioners did a good job of initially taking a look at this and giving some input. I would just reiterate the flip-flopping of that building and take a look at that too. I concur pretty well with that for all the issues that were brought up. People traveling south there to see a front of a building and not the back of a building. So I think you understand that pretty completely, but I just wanted to say I agree with that sentiment. So. We didn't really individually talk about the whole Dayton Parkway rerouting, but I'll just say that as much as it seemed like the right thing to do, like, I would love it rerouted, we're beyond that point. I mean, the right answer would have had to be different in the first place, but it's not. So that's my opinion.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, we routed it without knowing where point A to point B were going to connect, and who knows if it's right or wrong, but there's no reason to reroute it now when we still don't know the connection between point A and point B. We're just kind of second guessing ourselves. I think where it is now is point A.
I think it's just too late.
Yeah, what's that about not being able to put the toothpaste back in the tube, right? So I think that's where we're at. And we deal with the current infrastructure and try to make the other development work around that. So.
And I don't think the decision that was made in the past was the wrong decision necessarily, right? It was the decision that was, available at the time.
Yeah, it's a decision
right?
without all
it's
the
kind of how
answers.
development works. It's, it's iterative.
And I don't mean that the hound on that south road, but that's what I'm trying to avoid is us cutting off something because, again, and I'm directing this now to staff and council, but we have to look at those land uses. We can't just keep waiting for the applications to come in. Like, we should have made those land use changes already. That way we can properly evaluate this.
I think the land use map is in here.
Yeah, the current
If I'm
one.
mistaken.
Yeah.
And what is east of this say currently?
It's a mix of commercial, light industrial, and low density and medium density. It's 78 acres.
Yeah.
The comprehensive plan that was passed in 2022 does not follow the Dayton Parkway corridor that was built.
Yeah. So the corridor shifted to the left.
I think
So that
this
commercial.
Where the corridor was.
Yeah.
And so that's just where I'm making sure that whatever goes there, it has the access. And if we knew what was going there, it'd make it easier for us to give you better advice.
I believe this is supposed to be a public
Yeah,
hearing
this
as
is a
well.
public hearing. Thank you. We might have some more questions, or you guys can come back up if the public has some questions.
Thanks.
It is 8:12, and I will open the public hearing. Is anyone in the room to speak on this matter? If so, please come forward.
Good evening. I'm Joanne Dudica. I live at 17050 117th Avenue North. My total concern about this is the access points, and I'm glad you're discussing it, looking at it. That's really all I have to say. I'm really concerned about the traffic on 117th now, the way it is, and it is getting very, very scary. And I think that needs to be looked at as a additional point. Thank you.
Thank you.
How's it going? My name's Colton Ramsey. I live at 11481 East French Lake Road. Kind of the closest adjoining property to the south of the outdoor storage and warehouse distribution building. I guess my biggest concern would be my house is right off the corner of the outdoor storage, my bedroom window. My land is currently zoned residential, so in the future there will be houses there, and I'm backed up right to a outdoor storage and giant building, so it's kind of just my only concern, so.
Thank you.
Keith Grover, 113th in Fernbrook. Every time I look at this whole process when you guys are laying this stuff out, it kind of bothers me. Y'all know you screwed up when you put when you put the extension in over to 117th. I heard the council talk about it. I've heard the planning commission talk about it. This is your last chance to change this forever, not just for your couple of year term that you're sitting there, but forever for the city. This is the main access point that we're looking at to get in and out of Dayton, out from the Parkway, Dayton Parkway. If we screw this up now, it's screwed up forever. You know you messed up, you know to fix it, I understand it's gonna cost money to fix it. But this piece of property that we're talking about here is the only way to fix that and realign that with the French Lake Road and then on over to the north where we all think that road is supposed to go. But you're right, the city has blinders on. We haven't looked at the land use. We haven't laid a plan out there saying this is where the road is going to go. So people can look at it, make decisions like these gentlemen have to do with that piece of property they're looking at now. We need to look ahead. You hit the nail right on the head, Darren. We need to figure out how that road is going to go across there. We know it's going to go all the way across the city. We know it's going to go right by the new city garage and head north, and at some point, maybe go over the river. But down on this end is something that we have control over. We screwed it up. It's our only chance to fix it. If you don't fix it now, it's going to be that way forever. The other issue I have is I worry about these people having all this stuff in their backyard. Again, if somebody's laying out a plan that has all these residential lots, just like we talked about on Fernbrook, they've got all this industrial coming up there. What are we doing screening-wise so that these people aren't looking out into their backyard, like the gentleman just says, at a huge piece of property that's got God knows what stored on it, or looking at a huge building? If you go down to farther west on French Lake Road, the development that we built just west of French Lake, there's several homes along there. Some of those folks are friends of mine. If you go in their backyard and you stand in their backyard now, what you used to look at was farm fields. What you see now is a 40-foot high wall for a building. And there's virtually no screening other than what they have on their property. We didn't protect them. We didn't protect their screening. Whatever lighting comes from those buildings shines into their backyards. We have to look at all these things because you guys are designing a city that's going to be here certainly long past me. I'm getting old. You guys are all young. It's going to be here a long time. It's a permanent fixture. I really think you need to look long and hard about whether that's exactly what we want to have the main road coming into Dayton look like. That's all I got. Thanks.
Is anyone online?
If you'd like to speak during this public hearing, feel free to use the raise your hand function. Not seeing any.
All right. I just want to add one more comment about Dayton Parkway. And this is coming from my perspective, but I feel like if Dayton Parkway would have shifted, it would have been easier for it to extend north. It's not that it can't extend north, and it's still going to affect properties no matter where it touches today or if we move it east. It's just my opinion that if it were moved east, it would be easier to probably work its way north than the current situation where it has to go through a bunch of 5, 10, 15 acre parcels. But with that all being said, there's a cost involved, and I don't know when it's going to happen, but the question is it cheaper to continue its current path, which I think the answer is yes, versus the other path, because it's still all going to work out. It's just going to be harder to work out now. And that's what I kind of mean when I say I wished we would have moved it. There's no action on this. Is there any other comments before we move on?
I just have a question if the applicant has any questions for the commission.
Yeah,
you have what you need.
Close the public hearing.
All right. Thank you. It is 8:19, and I will close the public hearing. Moving on to item number 8C, comprehensive plan amendment, city code amendment related to the A3 district.
Yeah. So first I'll try to explain how we got here. It's been a while. I'm trying to remember exactly. We've had a number of few workshops on what would different ways to preserve the ruralness of Dayton, and kind of what the consensus was is to have larger lots in the north and to continue to allow suburban development in the south. We had conversations with the Met Council with the Met Council support to removing a portion of Dayton out of the Metropolitan Urban Service Area. So the Metropolitan Urban Service Area, MUSA for short, is essentially the boundary of where the Met Council plans to extend sewer and water at some point by the year 2040, or roughly. All of Dayton is within the MUSA. So again, the question was, would the Met Council support removing a portion of Dayton out of the MUSA? And the answer was no. We're essentially too close to the sewer station in Rogers. So the plan is that Dayton is eventually will develop all with regional sewer and water. The follow-up question to that was, can we do something different? So this area, northwest Dayton, is the farthest from the line from getting sewer. The current zoning is A1 agriculture, which has a minimum lot size of 40 acres. The question was, would the Met Council support allowing a density of 1 home per 10 acres? And the answer was yes, as long as we maintain that density. They would allow us to have the flexibility of having a varying lot size as long as the density didn't change. And as long as the ability of having sewer development would be preserved. So, again, most of this area is either in the 2040 or the post-2050 sewer staging area, and that's at a minimum. So again, the point is that this is decades from being able to develop with sewer. We've had conversations with the Planning Commission on where the boundary for the A3 district again is. So again, the A3 district, the intention is 4 homes per 40 acre density or 1 home per 10 acre density. So again, the question that was posed to the Planning Commission and Council is, what is the most appropriate area? Generally, the answer was north of South Diamond Lake Road and west of the Dayton Parkway extension. And granted, as we just spoke the last time, we don't have a clear idea of where of Dayton Parkway is going to go, but generally it's going to follow Zanzibar up to Vicksburg and then across to Highway 10 in Ramsey. So at the density of 1 home per 10 acres, essentially parcels that would be allowed to be subdivided have to have a minimum lot size of 20 acres to begin with in order to have 2 homes. That affects about 29 parcels that are highlighted green here. The building entitlements are about 100 homes. So altogether, this area is 2,800 acres in size. But again, with the 1 per 10 density, that would result in about 100 new homes. The Council and Planning Commission had a workshop in February, to just kind of discuss the outline of the A3 district. I think we've got it fairly narrowed down. So once again, the density is 1 home per 10 acres. The minimum lot size would be 1.5 net acres. So just say this is 1.5 acres of high ground. So this is intended to provide for both a house, a well, and a primary backup septic systems. The lot width is 140 feet wide. Setbacks are similar to what we have in other zoning districts, and then impervious surface area of 30%. Let's see. In order to comply with the directions that we have from the Met Council is to is to follow these 6 guidelines, and I'm highlighting the ones that are probably more pertinent. So the first one is to include the need to reserve land resources for efficient future urban development as part of the ordinance purpose. So that's essentially just stating a purpose that the A3 district is to allow unsewered residential development. It's an interim use or a temporary use. The long-term or permanent use is going to be sewered residential whenever that occurs. Item number 2 is to identify land characteristics required to support future urbanization. The idea with this, or my interpretation with this, is to require ghost platting that would demonstrate that this project, whatever project is capable of serving with higher density of 3 units per acre, or whatever the density requirement is at that time, when sewer becomes available.
To be clear, we don't have to meet 3. Overall, the city needs to meet 3 or 3.5. We just want to make sure that we can put maybe more density on these properties.
Yes. That's a very good point to make. So, but the general idea, if we say, okay, we're only going to meet 1 acre lots, it puts a lot of strain on the rest of the city to make up for that difference. But, that's a very good point. Item 3 is to allow no more than 25% of the developable land in a project to be developed, reserving larger future urbanization parcels. There's different ways to look at this. So one is clustering, and I don't mean a cluster septic system, I mean clustering the homes together and then reserving the larger parcel, whether it's for farmland or for just a native area or some other use. There's different ways to look at that, and I think with each development, there's going to have a different purpose to that. So we're going to see some projects where, and I'm just making up numbers, you might have 10-acre lots where it's just hobby farms. In other cases, you're going to have a development where homes are clustered together. So, let's say you have a bunch of 1.5-acre lots and you're taking 75% of the land and reserving that as farmland or open space or something that's not developed. So kind of the point is there's not a one-size-fits-all in this. And then the 4th item is to protect future urbanization parcels with temporary development agreements, easements, or deed restrictions. I'm a little more hesitant with this, and the reason being I think it's easy to make a decision today without knowing what the negative effects are decades from now. So, again, the idea is to protect land for future development. But to keep in mind what the effect is years from now. We do have Wildwood Estates. Did I get that right? Okay. Wildwood Estates in Northeast Dayton. So that was developed in, I think it was 80s or 90s or 90s. So this is Northeast Dayton. It was ghost platted. Most of the lots are between 2 and 5 acres in size. It was ghost platted for urban services to become available. So depending on the lot, you might be ghost platted for 3 lots. It might be 7 lots. So that's 20, 30 years from now. We don't have sewer and water in that area. We did not have covenants or deed restrictions that would prevent someone from building on 2 lots, ghost lots versus 1. So that's an example where this is kind of pushing it towards. It doesn't always work. So I just want the commission to keep that in mind. Those are my slides. So again, the commission's discussed this for a number of times. This is a public hearing. We've noticed quite a few people. I've talked to a handful of property owners.
Just a question to staff here, but in your packet, you had some specific things that you might want us to provide more feedback on. Is there really much more?
I think it's all going to be case by case.
That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
That's why I was struggling with the idea of
Yeah.
saying, yes, require ghost plan, require this stuff, because it's, what you're saying is an option depending on the parcel.
Sure, yep.
Perfect.
When we had the Council Plan Commission workshop, one of the directions that came out of that meeting was the desire to have options.
Yep.
So with ordinances, it's always easier when everything's written in black and white, but that's not always, doesn't always work.
Yeah. Any more questions of staff? This is a public hearing. It is 8:29, and we will open the public hearing on this matter. If there's anyone in the audience that would like to come forward, please state your name and address.
Hi, I'm Larry Gow, 15701 Shady View Lane, and I do live along one of the parcels that's set for rezoning, and I guess I don't have a problem with one house per 10 acres. I don't want to see 5 houses per acre behind my house, obviously, but that's quite a ways off. Looking at the plat map again, it's 2040 and post-2050 according to the map, so.
For the smaller lots.
I'm going to be close to being dead by then. Hopefully not quite. Anyways, so just to be clear, so this will basically allow, that's pretty much all of the tillable land left in that northwest corner that I can see. I run those roads and bike on those roads pretty regularly. So, but that will, my assumption then is to allow the landowners, if they desire, to sell off parcels for, now, do they have to sell off a 20-acre subdivision parcel and have for?
You'd have to start with 20 acres in order to be subdivided.
Okay, that's what my assumption was based on what you said, but I just wanted to clarify. So a 20-acre and then they're subdivided one house
Into
per
two.
10 acres.
Yep.
Okay.
To clarify,
Yeah.
just so everyone in the room is still on the same page, like if there's a person that had 40 acres.
Right.
They could put 4 homes in a 6-acre corner of it and leave the other
Yeah,
34 acres.
That's the 1.5
undeveloped.
acre.
They
Okay, and I
could
was
do
going to
that
ask
too.
about
Yep.
that. So yeah, thank you for clarifying that. Okay, so thank you. That was really my only question. I just want to kind of hear why it came. Why did this come about, I guess would be one question. Were there some particular landowners that are looking to sell some parcels because they want to retire and?
Yes.
Yeah, that was my assumption also, but, I figured there was something about it, and I know the parcel.
Having discussed this for 3 or 4 years, I think it's safe to say it was very city council driven, meaning the city
Yeah.
council members, the majority of them would like to see this happen.
Yeah.
More so than specific development.
Yeah.
There's obviously, we've heard stories that some people want to take their parcel that's 20 acres and sell 5 acres to their kids,
Yeah.
stuff like that too, but
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, and I know, the spot behind me is, the owner does desire to develop it, but his desire is, in talking to him, was to develop it with larger lot sizes because he kind of wants to preserve what Dayton is about. And, okay, that's all I had for questions, but I am going to just make a couple comments in general that I think address some of the things that these people talked about. And this is out of the comprehensive plan. And this is specifically on the land use goals and policies. And it's, so the first one here that I'm not going to read them all, I'm just going to read a couple that I think are important to myself and to a lot of people in this room, and hopefully you people also. Number 1, community image. Goal 1 is enhance community identity and sense of place through well-designed community gateways, signage, high-quality infrastructures, and attractiveness of properties. And I think you addressed that tonight with one of the commercial properties of wanting it to be attractive, so that's good. Goal 5, require appropriate land use transitions and buffers to ensure new development and/or redevelopment is compatible with existing areas and abutting roadways. This is a section under agricultural and rural residential. Policy 1 says, preserve rural view shed on major roads, open spaces, and natural areas to promote the rural character of Dayton, which I think is prime importance. Policy 2, encourage infill development that demonstrates compatibility with existing neighborhood characteristics in terms of quality, density, building height, placement, scale, and architectural character. And then there's another goal for housing types, but one of the policies is protect low-density and rural residential areas from incompatible uses by maintaining adequate buffering and/or transition densities from such uses. And then the last thing I wanted to comment on was because somebody brought up about the lighting. And they're actually, in the comprehensive plan, I don't have it here for the exact wording, but there is a section that discusses Dayton as a dark sky area, and that the goal is to limit upward lighting and to try to control lighting. So that is part of the comprehensive plan. I just wanted to say that that was in there. So that's all I have to say, and I hope the city council and the planning commission keeps some of these policies in mind, because that's what they're there for. And let's not forget the policies that are put in place to try to keep Dayton rural and not to have a huge cluster of development right next to an old residential area. Let's make sure that those transition zones and buffers are really there. Thank you.
Yes, Larry.
Hi there, I'm John Burnins. My family owns a couple of the parcels that will be rezoned in this, and very excited about this, obviously. But yeah, Mr. Gao. Yeah. So,
John, if you could just state your address.
Oh, sorry, 17921 Dayton River Road. So yeah, we own right behind Mr. Gao, and that is our intent: 1.5 acre to 2 acre lots. Just had a little question on the 25% rule. Can you elaborate a little bit on what the expectation is there? I mean, I think we plan to keep the majority of our property in agricultural uses, but just was curious on that.
So in your case, it would be clustering. So if you take the property, you put the development 25%, you reserve 75% as agricultural.
Okay.
It's on the flip side, like if you had 10-acre lots, it's still a question of how do you preserve 75% of that when it's not intended.
Okay.
When it's just intended as yard space.
Okay.
So.
And then as far as because we're working on some of the platting right now and some of that, and then as far as the comments you made around future urbanization and being able to further develop those lots in the future, is that something that we'll need to be considering in the design and development of the current platting we're working on?
Yeah, so I guess the example would be is how do you run sewer through, or future sewer?
Okay.
I think Jason could probably expand on that better than I could.
Well, just where you could further subdivide into the additional lots to increase the density while getting utilities through to service those.
Okay.
That makes sense.
So just considerations around where building sites are placed in those lots, things like that, or?
Potentially. I mean, that's where ghost planning becomes really helpful of, if sewer is going, if it makes sense to send sewer in a certain direction, then plan that in a ghost plat, rather than build a house or something else right on top of where the road might go.
Okay, perfect. And then as far as roads in some of these developments, do you guys have any thought on what expectations are with some of the roads that'll have to go through there?
Sure.
I assume not curb and gutter, just...
I think it'd be a rural section. We haven't really gotten that far into the detail of it. So.
All right, perfect.
Yeah, the only thing I think that came out of the code was that, John, correct me, but if it's more than three homes, the code says paved. Is that correct?
For the intention for an A3 district is, so I should back up. We had a conversation, should it be public roads versus private and paved versus gravel?
Okay.
And kind of where we settled on was, if it's more than 3 lots, it would be a public paved road.
Okay.
If it's 3 or less, then it could be a private road or an easement, although we've had challenges with easements.
Okay.
Which back up to the DCM farms that we're looking at would have a private road with 3 homes on it.
Okay,
So.
perfect. I think that's all the questions that I had. I assume you'll be letting us know on when this will go to city council date.
Yes.
I would encourage you to keep reaching out to city staff with questions on it too, so as you go through it, you get their
Oh, yeah.
feedback, because they'll keep having questions
talking
coming to
with
us, so
John.
we can.
Yeah. If, the intention, if, depending on what the plan commission's recommendation is, if they recommend approval, it would go to the council on
Yep.
March 25th.
Yep, and we'll keep reaching out. Just wanted to, as we're working on this, make sure we're staying in line with you guys as it moves forward. So, thank you.
Is there anyone online, Hayden?
If anyone online wants to speak at this public hearing, feel free to use the raise your hand function. Not seeing any, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, come on up, sir.
Second question. Dave Claxton, 14700 Vicksburg. So I'm the guy down on the end of the little pea gravel road there. So if you do a 4 homes in a 40, like right now, obviously it's gravel. So whether that's bituminous or concrete, I'm the smallest lot there. So if there's development left, right, or are you talking about potential concrete or asphalt?
Asphalt, yeah.
And then is that a special assessment or for, existing guys that live there that are on a gravel road today?
So generally, the developer pays for the road, and if
Traditionally.
you're on it, you benefit from it.
Traditionally, yeah. Okay, good. All right, that's pretty much it. Thanks.
If there's no one else here for the public hearing, I'm going to close it. There you go. All right.
Randy Dahlheimer, 15501 Dayton River Road. So, most of the questions were answered, but a few questions. If it's on a county road, is the county going to give access to parcels? I mean, that could be
It could be a challenge. I think it's better that Jason might answer that question, but I think that access is going to be a case-by-case scenario that has to be thought through.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. It would be up to the county to grant the permits for that. No, they are obligated to give you an access to your property. However, they're not necessarily obligated to permit an access that serves a higher intensity. However, the incremental, I think we're talking with here, I would at least hope they would be receptive to allowing those. What I'm getting at is if you have a farm access now, for example, that you use for agricultural purposes and you want to build a hotel, they don't have to grant that access permit.
So it's
But
my
if you're going
understanding.
from 1 to 2 single-family residences, I would sure hope there'd be some leniency on that on their end.
Yeah, if there's any platting along a county roadway, the county has review abilities.
Yeah.
And then to give feedback back to the developer as far as what they are willing or not willing to allow for in that development for access.
right. That's why I was kind of wondering if you pass an A3 zone without any really knowing exactly going case by case, how does that get decided? Because, in the end, it could be different for every property. I don't know if that's, going into it is a good way to go, because if you allow one use for somebody, the next guy would want at least all that.
Yeah, I think the thing that's going to eliminate some people from being able to do it is the feasibility, meaning that if you have a tougher site that requires a specific type of access, it's going to be tough.
Right, so it could be cost prohibitive on a lot of these potential parcels that you have circled.
And we talked a lot about access, and it's a difficult thing because there's just different roads, and there's even along Longdale, there's the conversation, well, do we allow more curb cuts on it? Because, again, is that going to hurt us 20 years from now?
Right.
And so that's why we were kind of silent on it, and because it is a case-by-case basis, and one thing you could do, too, is have a private driveway that splits off into 2 homes. So
Yeah.
there's options.
But them are always problems down the road.
Yeah, you better like your neighbor.
Pretty good chance of that.
Yeah.
My advice wouldn't be to recommend any of that, but if you don't have any criteria, that's kind of what I was wondering. If you are going to build up some kind of criteria before anything is approved, if it's called A3, you know, if it's agriculture, you know, that isn't agriculture, and it can be real gray. A lot of these people might have the idea that once they get on that 10 acres, it's, you know, cowboy country, can do whatever they want. And if there's no rules, in the future, when it is developed, even if it's 50 years from now, it'll be the same thing. Those people that are there are gonna say, well, we don't want no development. So as far as Dayton goes, in the long term, my opinion is it's
We might be
better to
creating
leave it
problems for people 30 years from now.
Yeah.
Not lying.
Yeah, the idea is to give flexibility for potential development. A lot of times, this is going to be a brand-new zoning district, right? A lot of times, what's going to happen potentially is in 10 years, the council at that time is going to say, it just does not fit our vision, or we need to make an amendment to better reflect exactly what we want to see happen. You're right, you don't know until you know that something will or won't happen. And if the council's desire is to push something in a direction that would help spur development or whatever it is that they want to see, they'll make the amendment to that zoning district to allow it for it to happen. So I think you're starting at a kind of broadly right now with this A3 district, and in 30 years it might be tightened a lot more closely to what exactly the council wants to see at the time.
And like, there's feasibility concerns that I think that alleviate a lot of stuff in my brain, in the sense that if you have 40 acres, you're not going to have some big meandering road through the 40 acres to serve 4 homes. It's just not going to be feasible. And so you're going to have to figure out how to make it work with your parcel, and there are ways.
Oh, for sure. I guess, you know, like I say, my biggest concern is without any rules at first, how that, you know, plays out. When I say rules, I mean certain ordinances that apply to A3.
Yeah.
If it's a new,
And there are
if
some.
a new
It's
district.
the one that wasn't defined is what to do about access, and because it's each road specific too on top of it.
Right. I didn't see any, you know, how it was written at all, if there is anything written yet or not.
There's a draft, but, you
There's
know,
a draft.
again, this is just, what we have is an A3 district, and what you're talking about would be implemented more through the subdivision ordinance, and every
Okay.
project is a little different. You know, when-
Tie them together.
Yep. So when we have suburban development or urban developments, you know, the tendency is, you know, you plan a road from one end of the property to another. It's harder to do when you have 40 acres and you're just building 4 houses at the very corner.
Yep. Okay.
Thank you.
Sorry to put my 2 cents in.
That's all right.
No problem.
Is there anyone else that would like to come forward? It is 8:47, and I am going to close the public hearing. Discussion. I'll just say from my perspective, I feel like this is the best version of what we went through for the last 3 or 4 years that I've been on the planning commission. And I'm not 100% certain we're not going to create problems, but I think that that's where, when we review these concept plans, it'll be very important to, and we've talked about so many things to be on the lookout for, so I feel good about it. And I think that the way the ordinance is drafted I like it.
Yeah, I'd agree. I think this is a great way to allow landowners to, you know, do some development now and not wait till 2050 for the pipe to come through, and it will preserve the rural feel that we've all wanted, right? To allow for a small or large lot density of housing to get developed out in this area. And once that happens, you know, half these parcels do get developed this way. When the pipe comes by, it doesn't mean they're going to expand and add more houses, right? It's just, you know, so it's a great way to preserve some beautiful land out there, and still allows for some development and sale of property, and so I like the direction.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, like I said before, this isn't the be-all of end-all of the ordinance, right? So, of the zoning district either. And then on top of that, as John was referring to, is that there's other land use approvals that potentially might need to happen with developments that come through. So not only do they have to meet the underlying zoning criteria, but all the subdivision requirements and so on and so forth. So not to say that any of this land stays A3 forever either, right? It might be a different zoning classification in 30 years. So I like the direction that it's going. Obviously, I haven't been here for 3.5, 4 years, which sounds like the previous planning commissions have really put their heads together and obviously work with the council to get a proposal in front of the council for the next meeting that makes sense. Maybe it's not 100%, but you're pretty darn close. So I like the proposed ordinance.
Yeah, and I think this is a good one to commend staff for sticking with it because there was lots of different directions this was going at times. The only thing I'll add to before we entertain a motion is I know there's been discussion about the 1 per 10 and potentially going lower. I think there's risk in it, and that's why I think that if the council chooses that route, my only advice is that the code that we've written is that I probably would, me personally, would suggest changes if we go below that. I don't think it's wise to go below it. From a standpoint, I don't want the risk on the city from the Met Council breathing down us, but if you guys were to do that, I think that the code probably needs some more tweaks.
And Darren, you're speaking if we had a density that was lower than 1 home per 10
acres on average. So I know that there's
higher than, if we had 5, 1 per 5.
Right. And don't get me wrong, I'd love to see, I wouldn't be against it, it's just I don't want to deal with the risk of the Met Council. And likewise, that we probably would suggest some different changes to the code. If there's no more discussion, I will entertain a motion.
Well, I'll make the motion recommending approval of the comprehensive plan amendment and city code amendment related to the A3 district, which is item number 08C, tonight's meeting.
I'll second.
All right. We'll do a roll call vote. We'll start over here with Jeff.
Yes.
Yes for me.
Yes.
And Nick.
Yes.
Motion carries 4-0. This will go to the council, I believe you said on
March
25th. Okay, perfect. All right, moving on to item number 8D, the Schany parcel, zoning map amendment, planned unit development, and preliminary plat.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. So this is the first test of the A3 district. So this project came in as a concept plan in, I'm going to say back in the summer. So it kind of precipitated the conversation with should we have an A3 district, in which the commission and council were both for that. The concept plan, I should back up. So this is 107 acres off of North Diamond Lake Road, northwest of Laurel Lake. So Brockton is just to the west, maybe 1/8 of a mile or so outside the city limits. When the concept plan came in, it was proposed for 14 lots. The plan has been revised to comply with the A3 district as much as possible. We're trying to run this project through concurrently with the A3 district. Of course, that being that we don't have an adopted A3 district, staff's recommendation is to table action on this preliminary plat and let the A3 district be adopted by the council, and then come back for the preliminary plat in April. So again, this project is 107 acres, 10 lots. It meets the density of 1 home per 10 acres. The minimum lot size, I believe, is 5 acres in this case, and goes up to 20. I should add that within the comprehensive plan, it has a land use category called a Greenway Overlay District, in which case the intention is that any land that touches the Greenway Overlay is required to be a conservation plan unit development. The overlay district, and I don't have this on the map here, but it does include this wetland complex as well as Laurel Lake. So again, the idea of conservation PUDs is that you're exploring what is the ecological value of the property and what is worth preserving, and then what is the mechanism to preserve that. The most recent conservation PUD that we've had was Parkway neighborhood as an example. So Parkway is a large project. It did require an EAW, which identified, what are all the features and the quality of those features, and then it was up to the commission and council to decide what it is that wanted to be preserved. This is a smaller project, even though it's 107 acres. It does not require any EAW. It's just the information to judge by is what we know. We do have the Minnesota Land Cover Classification System, or MLCCS, which covers all of Hennepin County and kind of grades the quality of natural ecology from a high quality to poor quality and to a quality of disturbed with non-native species. There's a very long acronym for it. Areas on this property is identified as poor or altered with native species. So kind of the messaging is there's something there that's worth preserving, but it's not super high value. In Dayton, most of the land that is of high value is within Elm Creek Park Reserve. There is some other areas that it's on private property, but that's not the case here. So again, referring to the E3 district, the items that are highlighted, and granted every project is going to be different. Number one is include the need to reserve land resources for efficient urban development as part of the ordinance purpose. Staff's recommendation is to require a ghost plat that would show how could this project be further subdivided at urban densities and where is the sewer going to go. In this case, there is a whole lot of topography, and so where the sewer line goes is fairly limited. Item 2 is to identify the land characteristics required to support future urbanization. So again, identifying what is the developable area, what is the area that is high ground that is more practical to serve with sewer and water. And item 3 is to allow no more than 25% of developable land to be developed. In this case, it's a little bit more difficult. So when we discuss clustering, where you're putting all the homes in a small area and reserving 75% of the land for future development, that's not the case here because you just have a lot of large lots. The homes are not clustered. So the question for the commission is, what is the appropriate way to preserve that? And I don't know if there's a great answer. It's going to be whatever answer you come up with. And then 4 is to protect future urbanization parcels with temporary development agreements, easements, or deed restrictions. We spoke about this a little bit with the A3 district. Sometimes when you make decisions today, it may not be a great decision 30 years from now. So just to be mindful of what I think Darren used the term of unintended consequences are. So again, with this project, what we're looking for is recommendations on how can this project continue as rural, unsewered, 1 home per 10 acre density, while still preserving the ability of having urban services at some point in the future. So any questions?
What's the smallest subdivided lot?
The
smallest subdivided lot then?
About 5 acres. Oh, what else am I missing? So generally speaking, the general idea of this is to mirror Thicket Hill development that's to the north. So Thicket Hill is 10 acre lots that was developed in the 1990s. So this street would enter in or connect with North Diamond Lake Road. The county's requirement is that this is going to be treated as a temporary access. We do have right-of-way for Xanthus, which would line up as a 4-way intersection. There's topographical challenges that would be problematic to extend this road or Xanthus to the development. And so the idea is this is a temporary access. Once, whenever this property is developed in the future, the permanent access would be tied into Xanthus. So the staff's recommendation is to require ghost plating that would also demonstrate how Xanthus can connect to this road.
Before we have the applicant come up here, John, but do you have 2 or 3 ways of the preserving 25%, how you could, options for us to consider? Because
I don't have a good way. So,
I'm
different
struggling looking
options.
at it.
Yes. So in
I don't see it
discussing
either.
the A3 district, so you have ghost plating where, and I'm just making up numbers. So you have a lot that has 5 ghost lots, you build on one, you reserve the other 4 as non-buildable. It may or may not work depending on the lot and depending on the property owner. There's a possibility you could have deed restrictions or covenants that would require the house to be built in a certain area and prohibited in other areas. There's still the question of how do you enforce that or who enforces that. So again, there's probably not one good single answer.
Right. And there's some topography on this one too, and I look at these bigger lots too, and when the applicant comes up here, this is one thing I'd be curious to hear about, but accessory buildings.
Yes. So one other caveat with this is within the shoreline district of Laura Lake. So the shoreline district extends out 1,000 feet from the lake and has restrictions for lot size. So for unsewered, it's 40,000 square feet or just roughly 2 acres. No, it's 80,000 square feet, so 4 acres. And if it's sewered, then it's 40,000 square feet. You get 20,000 square feet.
I think it's, one of the
Hayden's
routes
going to correct me.
to preserve the 25% is go the PUD route.
Yeah.
And understand what the public benefit is.
Yes.
Okay. Any more questions, staff?
20, 40, 40.
I see the applicants here. Would you like to come forward, please?
Hello, I'm Zach Brown, 13311 Arrowwood Lane North, Dayton, Minnesota.
Do you have anything specific you want to say to any of our comments, or maybe how your ideas on preserving the 25%?
Yeah, I mean, I think this whole thing starts off with we're preserving more than anything else could be set forth. If you wanted to sewer and water this lot or this parcel of land, you would run into a few things. One, 70-plus foot deep manholes for sewer and water service, mainly sewer. 3+ lift stations, which runs over $1 million. And then this has a greenway overlay, which is correct me if I'm wrong, John, but this requires a certain amount of preservation.
Case by case, yeah.
You would not be able to preserve a single thing out here. The amount of topography and soil types you have would require this to be leveled out like a sod field, and everything would have to go. Every single thing. For a gravity-fed sewer system to work out here, your sewer lots your city lots with sewer would end up north of $300,000 a piece, just to be frank. This is probably the best use for the land that I can come up with. I'm a developer and I like sewer and water lots. This site is not going to work for that for numerous reasons, like I just explained. But also, as far as what you can do with it and how it's laid out, this is the best use I could come up with. I've had my engineers scratch their heads and redraw it 5, 6, 7 times. This is it. I mean, this is the best we can come up with. I get calls every day about this site. I've got people that want to be here. Dayton's a gem. People want to be in Dayton. This is a highly desirable site. There's not really much more you can do. The site, I mean, I've had soil experts out there. They call it peanut butter. It is terrible. It is not conducive for sewer and water development. This is the best use we can come up with. It's going to preserve the natural habitats that are there, the ecosystems, everything that's out there. And with the greenway overlay and not being able to clear cut, and then also with Lake Laura being an environmental lake, you can't just cut trees down. This is the best use that's going to preserve it. This is the best use that's going to allow it to be something other than a bean field. And right now, with the 10 homes we had 13 drawn originally, but the Met Council said that's not going to happen. I mean, from what I've been told,
Doesn't meet the density.
It's not going to happen, right?
Right.
Right. So I mean, I don't see a whole lot of other ways this piece can ever be split up. I know theoretically, we're all trying to hope that sewer and water's there someday, 2050, beyond, whatever. I like sewer and water. I'm a developer. I did Pine View Meadows. I've done plenty of other sewer and water sites. This one just does not, it's not conducive. It's not gonna happen. So I think this is the best use for the land. I think we can move through it in a short period of time. I think it'll be a gem for the city of Dayton. I think this will be kind of a crown jewel that could maybe move the needle a little bit and get that higher price point into Dayton, because that's inevitably, that's what it's gonna have to be. It's just gonna have to be somewhat of a higher end neighborhood. But I think, I think that with the Daytona Golf Course and Lake Laura and all the different features it's got going for it, I think it can work. And we're looking to do it. We're looking to put a very high investment into the city of Dayton and try to help move things along. But it's a very unique project. People want privacy. People want to buy their little gem. They want to buy their little piece of oasis. They want their privacy. They want to, the way Dayton used to be was acreage. The way Dayton used to be, I lived in Dayton my whole life. My parents back in 1997, they bought a couple acre lot and I grew up on it. I loved it. It was great. I think people in Dayton want to get back to that, and I think that we've kind of gotten away from it. And that's something that people want. And based on the amount of calls I've gotten on this site, I know that's what people want.
What do you anticipate the price point of the lots to be? I mean, obviously there's a range, because there's different lots with different appeal, but.
It's still up in the air. There's a lot of loose ends. We're working through the county right now about if they're going to require an expanded shoulder upon the entrance on North Diamond. Sounds like they will. We're trying to fight it because we don't want to do it, but it sounds like they're going to make us do it. And then between that and some of the stormwater engineering, there's some overages coming. So I don't want to be pinholed into quoting a number, but they're not going to be typical city lots. I mean, they're going to be spendier. But that's why people are paying for it. They want to be in Dayton. They want to be in this Rogers School District. They want to be their little private oasis away from everything else. If they wanted to buy in a Lennar neighborhood or a D.R. Horton neighborhood and have a community pool, they would have done it. They don't want that. And there's a high demand for people that don't want that. And Dayton's filling out right now with D.R. Horton, Lennar, and Pulte. And there's so many people that are sick of it. They don't want it. They want custom homes. They want to be able to pick their cabinets. I mean, you go to D.R. Horton right now and they say, do you want A, B, or C? You want white, gray, or black? And you don't get to pick what you have. You get A, B, or C. That's it. People want to build their own home. They want to have their own walking trails. They want to have, some people, you can bow hunt on this land. There might be people that want to take their kid out and do target practice with their bow and arrow in their woods. Let them do it. I mean, it's not, Dayton used to be that way. That's where I grew up in, was Dayton that was how it was. And it's totally changed, and I think there's people that they just want to go back to, I want my little slice of privacy.
I don't have any questions.
I think the only question I would have is that if this is the only option for this property, splitting the land up as it is and only building 10 homes on this land, it's not an interim use anymore, is it?
For the Met Council's purposes, we're calling it an interim use. So the idea is still, through ghost planning, is we're demonstrating that it can be subdivided into the 3 units per acre.
But what the developer is saying is that that's never going to happen in his opinion, right? So what he's saying, it's only going to be developed for 10 parcels.
For the point of the argument, though, and for Met Council, it has to just be shown that it could be
That it
developed,
could be.
and that there could be sewer, even if the sewer isn't feasible.
And even
financially.
when you think about the ghost plat on this, I would prefer something realistic. If it happens to be 1 unit per acre, meaning that you could just subdivide future lots along the road as sewer came in, it's going to be expensive and probably not feasible. But at least we know what we're dealing with, because we just saw a development that was 3.7 units per acre. That we have DCM Farms, something like that.
3.09 was the overall density.
3.0.
3.74 in the northeast area.
Great. So it was already above 3. So to me, it's okay if we're less than, we don't need to try to show something that's 3. I'd rather see a ghost plat that's realistic, so we just know what we're dealing with, right? And maybe it could make sense to pull some cul-de-sacs in here or there. If there was actually sewer, I get it, it's probably not happening, but that's what I'd prefer to see on a ghost plat, just so we're checking the boxes of making the council happy.
Yeah, the shoreline regulations are going to require that they be larger lots, so even though we're saying 3 units an acre,
Yeah.
it's going to be
Right.
less than that.
Ghost plat it with that main road as the crux of your whole ghost platting, which is gonna probably limit lots coming off of it only. Maybe 1 or 2 cul-de-sacs you could throw in there.
So am I hearing that you just want to have a ghost plat that shows what could be done in the future?
Yeah.
Not necessarily what, because my only concern is if I show you a ghost plat, I just want to be realistic that there's a chance that some homes may have to come out because of the elevation change. Because when you look at this piece and the mass grading that would have to happen, there is some.
I think your plat lines are already established, so that's what I'm trying to say is be realistic. If it happens to only be 1 lot per acre, because a 400-foot lot gets turned into 3 lots only, that's it. I'm okay with it. I just want something realistic so we know what we are giving up, and it is what it is. It's this. I agree this is a good product. I don't want a ghost plat that, ignores the topography and makes it look like, it's going to be
Like
3
the
years.
villas at DCM Park.
Right. Yeah, we don't need that.
Unfortunately, it's a checkbox that has to be done to meet
Yes.
the council, right?
It is.
Like it's,
For clarification, and Jason, you'll have to correct me, so for sewer, I think sewer, it's really 2 different projects. So on the east side, sewer is likely to come from the east, and on the west side, it'll come from the south.
The southerly portion would come off of North Diamond Lake Road up Xanthus is how the plan is laid out. A portion of it maybe could be served with gravity, but it'd be difficult. The northerly portion, to be honest, I don't know how you get it there. Maybe a pressure system or something creative to try to service the area, but it's not going to be economical.
And so I'm not asking you to redo your plat. I mean, when you ghost plat it, start with your plat lines you already think don't change them. So you're adding more lines to show what you could do if sewer came through. And that might include tearing down a house. It might be 30 years from now, and maybe that's what happens anyway.
yeah, I mean, could be a super nice area, right? Like, people are going to hopefully build every house as a custom home, different from the one next to it, and these people are going to live here forever, and no one's ever going to develop it, right? But it's a checkbox that the Met Council needs to see on how could it be developed for sewer, even though sewer will probably never go through the street.
Otherwise, this can't happen, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I don't think it's, like you said, Darren, I don't think you change the lines that you have. You just ghost plat what could happen to split it more.
And I guess part of the debate that we've had too is like, do you then try to say you have to keep houses within certain plots in order to leave that open, or you just let them go wherever they want and deal with it in the future? Which I would prefer.
Case by
that.
case,
Yeah.
and I on this property, I wouldn't be suggesting, the only lot that maybe you'd give some thought, and maybe the city would come in, is the far eastern big lot, only just because it's so big. Like right now, and I don't know how hard, fast those septic systems are where they're put, but the septic is pushed all the way to the east where, maybe if you could push it the other direction or north, and maybe that's not even possible, that'd be maybe easier to someday incorporate sewer development to the
Somebody's
east.
gonna love that property.
What's that?
That's gonna be a nice piece of
That's gonna be a nice property.
So, I know the septics were put in place based on where we found suitable primary and secondary spots. We had Endy, a professional company out, and they identified the spots that are, represented on the map. And it, not to say it couldn't be something someday down the road, but I think we've all established that the northern half, right, John, probably is untouchable. I'm happy to ghost plat the whole thing. I don't know if it's worth ghost platting the northern half, because we've all kind of agreed it's not really doable, but we can ghost plat it. We've already done that. We've got the whole southern half ghost platted. I don't know if that'll help with the Met Council, but these house locations and septic locations are based on boring samples we've done, scientific studies on site. Everything that's on there is checked out based on on-site data. And there was, my engineer's first reaction when we started this was there's no suitable septic locations. So the first thing we did was call in a septic specialist to come out and find it. And their first reaction was this soil is peanut butter. And that's how this got to be where it is and how it's laid out.
Accessory buildings, I'm assuming that there's probably going to be an HOA on here, that architectural, but accessory buildings, I'm just looking at a couple of these lots, just the way the septics are too, making sure that, people can still get them in and get access to them. Because most accessory buildings, and then, I forget the distance, but if the lot's not X amount of deep, it has to be in the backyard.
Yeah. Put 150 feet.
And some of these lots are long enough that you couldn't put it in the front yard.
So our intent, and this maybe doesn't matter to the city, but this is our intent, is that all outbuildings would need to be behind the rear corner of the home that's built, and it would have to be built with lake-type finishes to the home. So the outbuildings would have to match the house, and they have to be pushed back far enough on the lot that it's behind the rear corner. I'm not saying it has to be behind the house as far as left and right, but as far as front and back, it has to be at least that far back. We're not allowing any front yard buildings, no auxiliary buildings that are just put up with cheap tin or anything like that. They have to be built with lake-type homes to the property. That's what we are going to require. And then again, behind the rear corner of the home, as far as depth in the lot.
How are you requiring that? Are you going to have an HOA?
We're going to have architectural guidelines and strict covenants.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Yep.
Just to make sure someone doesn't put a bright pink chicken coop right in their front yard or something like that. Just simple stuff like that.
So you've tested out the properties and make sure that works for each?
It works for septics, and it works for building pads. As far as outbuildings, that has not been tested, and that's up to the individual
That far
homeowners.
northeast property, just because of how it's all laid out, and the driveway comes from the north down to the south. Like, what is the front and what's the back? And that's a weird one.
The driveways are
So
proposed.
there's also a lot of
Yep.
trees and everything up there too, though. So if an outbuilding was off the driveway before the house, it's probably not a big deal.
Mhm.
I mean, I think this is the kind of development we're looking for with Day 3.
I mean, just to go back to, for all intents and purposes, this is going to probably be a permanent type of development, right? We don't ever see more than, probably we'll never see more than 10 homes, or this be further subdivided. So, some of the considerations should be made for that, the Thicket Lane intersection to North Diamond Lake Road. Or in the staff report, it says it's a temporary connection until Xanthus Lane is obtained. I don't ever see that not being a permanent type of entrance into this development.
So, again, the intention is once sewer is available, and granted, okay, soil conditions may dictate otherwise. Once sewer is available, it's the idea that this could be subdivided again, as well as the neighboring properties here. If that's practical or not is another thing.
Can the county come in once the sewer comes down Diamond Lake Road and say you have to close the current entry and you have to use Xanthus and because you have to line up the intersection?
If
Can they
this
force
is
that, or can
developed,
they- if it's-
you could, because the idea here is there would be right of way that would be shown, I don't know exactly where, but somewhere in this area. And then when this is platted, it would then connect to that stub, and then this would go away.
So it wouldn't have to go straight, because it looks like there's a right-of-way that goes straight up.
Right, and it.
Right, and it would cut in right into the property, right next to the house, the middle property.
I don't understand, there's a
massive
huge
spot.
hill
Oh,
there.
yeah, I'm saying the feasibility of it is little to none, but
Pulling a road that goes up
I just want to make sure we're not.
40 feet in a short distance. Yeah.
Could I comment on that quick?
Please.
I'm just going to walk over there. We'll get a quick comment.
Yeah.
So the way it's currently looking is the current Xanthus lineup The issue with it is from here to here, we've got a 30-plus foot elevation, and you just can't shove that through. It doesn't work. So what we've looked at, and with John and Zach over time, is somewhere on this flag-shaped lot right here, granting right away, so that when these two pieces go, they can have their xanthus line up, but it would, assuming these two homes were to go someday, it would come in and hook over, and we would have this T in here, and that's up to you guys whether this entrance ever goes away or not, but it would essentially be, part of our final plat approval would be right-of-way granted right about here.
So with the ghost plat, it would also go, say ghost, how it would be feasible to swing the road around.
Yeah, you're putting a lot of pressure on that inside lot then to connect to that then, right? That takes away a lot of developable land to get that road over there. But
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
One thing I'm looking at too, this is just to understand where we end up going with this PUD road with the 25%, but on the lots in the northwest corner, we have the big chunk of upland extending to the west boundary. Is there a possibility, so when you come back here, because we're tabling this tonight because of the A3, I guess I'd like you to consider is if we put that into a conservation easement, it takes it out of density requirement and it might help meet some PUD too. And I get it, so the property owner would still have exclusive rights to be using it, they just can't build something there.
Right.
So you don't have to spawn right now, but when you come back, I think that would be a question I'd probably ask you. Yeah.
I guess I just want clarification as to what your question is. Are you saying you want me to take the wetlands in the rear of those lots and put them into
the wetlands for sure, even the upland. So the upland corner, how it extends all the way to the western boundary.
Mm-hmm.
It's so you could follow, like the green, actually, John has it. If the green is the conservation easement.
So this is somewhat of an arbitrary line that just follows one of the contours. But the general idea is to try to link the two wetland complexes.
So the upland in that green area is already in a proposed potentially conservation easement, we might ask. But they're obviously part of lots. You just wouldn't be able to build anything back there.
restricting building to that area wouldn't be an issue. One comment I had in a conversation with John a while back was a different conversation. So building back there is not a concern. But some of these people are going to want to carve in trails, or maybe they want to do bow hunting, or they want to do bow target practice with their kids, or have walking trails for their dogs, whatever it may be. Conservation easement, I guess, is kind of a loaded question.
How restrictive is it?
Yeah, are we talking they can't cut in a walking trail with a lawnmower, or are we talking they can't build physical structures? Because there's no need for a physical structure in any of those green areas, and I'm happy to say, sure, let's do that. But if you're saying, someone wants to have a shooting lane for a bow and arrow and target practice with their kid or whatever, that's a different story.
In my brain, I was thinking structures, not the other stuff. But
I agree with
how that works with the staff was thinking.
It's a fine line. So, you think of like Elm Creek Park Reserve, and, that's a natural area that allows snowmobile. Okay, so is snowmobiling a conservation use? Well, depends.
I think it's more of conserving the land from future development.
Yeah.
So snowmobile trail would require a trail with cutting trees or plowing, cutting grass or whatever, and that's pretty normal. But I don't think anyone's trying to build anything on a wetland. I don't think that's a problem. It's just more so like, hey, can I go walk my dog and take my lawnmower and carve a trail?
Yeah.
I don't think that's something we want to restrict. But as far as building stuff, I don't see a problem with that. That's totally fine. But telling people they can't walk back there and carve a trail with their lawnmower,
So by comparison, so we have and I'm hitting a little bit. So on wetlands, we have a 25-foot buffer and then 10-foot setback. Within that buffer, it's intended to be just left as a natural area.
Yeah, and that's
not mowing.
Yeah, that's correct, and that's inclusive of the wetland as well. There are pretty strict guidelines to what is permitted activity within wetlands, and trails are limited to public trails within those areas. And I believe that that's consistent with the Wetland Conservation Act as well, so.
So even, with or without a conservation easement, it still has to meet the wetland restrictions that we have in the ordinance as it is, with or without the A3 district.
So as a developer, you're not looking at me to say, hey, you can or can't do this.
We do that.
Right,
But
right,
then you put up the sign that says you can't do it.
right. Do not cut your grass, yes.
Yeah.
Got it.
Good.
This is a public,
Oh, wait, sorry. Do you have an add-on? So, no? In doing the review for this for parks and trails, the parks chapter in the comprehensive plan does identify a neighborhood park on the north side of Laura Lake. I tried to find, where did this come from? And it comes from the 1988 comprehensive plan. So there's some history with it. The 2040 comprehensive plan also identifies a trail corridor along North Diamond Lake Road, as well as a trail corridor that cuts through this property north to south from North Diamond Lake Road to Dayton River Road. When the concept plan was discussed at Planning Commission and Council, there was not support for a neighborhood park here. I believe there was support for a trail corridor along North Diamond Lake Road. When this was reviewed by the Park Commission, the commission recommended that there would be a park on Laura Lake, as well as a trail corridor on North Diamond Lake Road, but not an internal trail corridor. The Parks Commission's kind of recommendation was that this would be a nice passive lake or passive park with a shelter, not a playground, nothing that's going to be very active. The term is to demonstrate how Dayton used to be. In staff's kind of conversing about this, of if the intention is to have a park on Laura Lake, is the north side the best location for that? It would be difficult to access as it is. It might be more practical if it were along North Diamond Lake Road and along the trail corridor.
I would support a trail along North Diamond Lake Road. I mean, especially with it being such a busy road, like to be able to, that's a long-term thing, but to start to identify easements for that. And then, since Laura Lake comes so close to the road, that's where you want to put a little park with a shelter right off the bike path. I don't think I'd invite people through the neighborhood to try to create something off the beaten trail.
I would concur.
Be more of a public amenity.
Can I speak on that quick? I'm just going to go over to the monitor quick. So, we've got private landowners on both sides of our access to North Diamond. And so right now, we would have a dead-end trail that's about, a few hundred feet long, and it would just dead end. There's a wetland right here and a wetland right here. So it's not continuable on either end. So even if this piece develops or this piece develops, that's it. That's all you're going to get. It's not going to go anywhere. It's not going to connect to anything. And it's going to be an undue burden on this development for 10 lots to have to pay for. If this gets redeveloped into 220 lots someday, like it unlikely but might happen, I think that developer at that point would be more eligible to take it on. It's a pretty big burden for 10 homes for a short stretch that just dead ends here and dead ends here, and private owner, wetland, and then it just goes nowhere.
So it would be an easement, not construction of a trail.
Right.
And an easement's great. I'm happy to, sorry, I'll get back to the microphone. I'm happy to do the easement for it. That's totally good. The construction of it's just, it just doesn't make sense.
Well, it probably wouldn't happen unless North Diamond Lake was completely reconstructed.
Right.
You can put a path through without that happening. So, you're way down the road, but
Yep.
I would
Get the easement in.
Yeah, we have to think ahead.
Put the
if
easement
there's
in
a
the
desire for it.
Yep.
You need an easement.
And just one thing to consider is when we're considering landscaping and entrance monuments, and the county is making us do an expanded shoulder coming in right there, which is about a 6-foot section by 100 and some foot long. That is coming from eastbound going west, that's going to be, they're requiring us to do that. So, I mean, that might impact the trail a little bit, but as far as just setting aside an easement for it, that's not an issue. The fact of putting it in right now just.
It doesn't go anywhere.
It doesn't,
So-
yeah, it's a 400-foot stretch of blacktop that just dead ends on each end against wetlands.
I would also add, North Diamond Lake Road is the main corridor. We do require a 35-foot landscape buffer that, within that 35 feet, you have stormwater ponding that's way in excess of that. So I guess my recommendation will be when this comes back of pushing that 35-foot landscaping on the north side of the stormwater pond. And I'm sure that there's creative ways that your engineer can look at it and try to figure out how to make sense.
Yep, happy to set aside easement. I just don't think the trail right now would make, like I said, a
It won't
400-foot
go
stretch of
anywhere,
dead
so,
end on each
yeah.
end, yeah.
No, it wouldn't make any sense to build it now, but just planning for the future. And it could be that the trail wants to be on the other side. Who knows? But
Yeah, so the comp plan shows a trail on both sides.
Sure.
Yeah.
on a busy road like that, it makes sense.
Yep.
Okay.
All right, I am ready to open the public hearing. Zach, we might have a couple more questions for you. If you have any more comments, you can come up after the public hearing, but it is 9:30, and I am going to open the public hearing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
If anyone's in the audience that would like to speak on this application, please come forward. Hayden, do we have anyone online?
Yeah, a couple still online. If you'd like to speak during this public hearing, just use the raise your hand function on Zoom.
All right. It doesn't appear anyone's in the audience and anyone's online, so it is 9:31. I am going to close the public hearing. Staff is recommending we table this, but before we do that, is there any discussion, anyone wants to provide any further discussion?
I just want to say that I like the development. I think it is, I think, along the lines of what Mr. Brown was saying, something that Dayton wants and that, people want this in Dayton. My only concern is how it's going to fit into the new A3 district and the requirements of Met Council. So 100% I want to see this go through. I think it's going to be a great development for Dayton. We just have to make sure how it actually fits in with our soon-to-be rules and regulations of the district.
Yeah. If there's no more discussion, do we need to formal motion?
Yes. I'll make a motion to table this item pending City Council's approval of the A3 district.
I'll second.
All right, we're going to do a roll call vote. We'll start down here with Nick.
Aye.
Paul?
Aye.
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 Motion carries 4-0 to table it. We will see this again probably next month.
Probably in April, yep.
All right, moving on to item number 8E, City Code Amendment related to public hearing notification requirements.
All right. I will be brief after the Planning Commission and City Council has discussed this a couple times about expanding the notification requirements for public hearings. An ordinance was drafted by staff to increase the required buffer from 500 feet to 1,320 feet, which is a quarter mile. Happy to answer any questions. This is a public hearing, so.
Thank you. Any questions of staff? It is 9:33, and I'm going to open the public hearing on this matter.
The public is fleeing.
Is anyone want to stick around and comment on this topic? Or is there anyone online?
Come on, Keith.
It is still 9:33, and I'm going to close the public hearing. I'll just start out with this discussion. I think it's a no-brainer. It's about time we do it. Just more people that are noticed, the better.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, it's good for transparency, right? Try to get as much public comment as we can. Make sure we're not leaving somebody out that might want to comment on it, have a stake in it. A good example is on the picture here. These lots are big, with this 500-foot notification radius. Previously, you're only capturing a couple of properties. So now we can kind of get all the stakeholders, and not to say they wouldn't be here anyways, but now we can ensure that they've been notified.
Is there an impact on costs to the
Oh,
city?
yeah.
Yeah, huge, and staff effort, right?
So the postage for DCM Farms was $500.
For the enlarged area?
For the people that spoke.
Yeah.
How do you send it?
Just postage, 61 cents a.
I think it's 70 now.
Might be.
So how long it's been since I bought stamps?
So, is there a way of working in that anticipated fee into the application, the cost of the application to apply for these land use requests?
There is. So in our fee ordinance, the applicant pays for mailing. Now, in reality, we're not charging for mailing. We are charging for the public hearing notice that goes to the newspaper, just by cost. So it's a little more challenging. So, for example, we have, 528 addresses. A lot of them are duplicates. So we can say, okay, you're paying for 528 stamps. We may only send out 450, or we just send them out anyways.
And we do not mail duplicates,
It is the year 2025, and maybe we got to wait till the year 2035, but I can imagine that this is going to become email notifications, that the city can figure out how to collect emails by homes.
If we can require people to have that,
it would have to change state statute level first.
Requirements.
Is it?
Yeah, so this goes to the property owner, not the resident. Is
We
one
just a drone that flies around.
Right, yeah, so the property owner might be California.
Correct.
We've had property owners in Egypt, and,
Yep.
and it comes 61
email.
cents comes
Yeah.
back again.
Right.
Does staff do like do you guys collect like an escrow for these land use? So there is a potential ability to say, hey, look, we have an overrun, or, we only had to mail out 50 instead of 250. So there is a potential of charging that back to the applicant or the owner, whoever it might be, through that process as well. So I'm not as concerned with, I think upping it to the quarter mile, especially in Dayton, you're going to have the larger lots, is absolutely the right thing to do. 500 feet works well in first ring suburbs. It doesn't work well in Dayton. So I think the cost is something that we have to work out if we think it's too overbearing.
We can charge that to
I
the
don't think it is.
Now, would we have to mail, so the statute says 350 feet.
Correct.
We probably have to mail to 350 feet. Outside of that, the city could probably, in the future, make a decision that people outside of the certain boundary get identified a different way.
Well, just for clarification on that, with the language in the current ordinance, and it still applies here with this ordinance amendment, for the 500-foot requirement, if there are less than 25 addresses or properties within that 500-foot buffer, there has to be an increase in size to meet at least 25 surrounding property owners.
That's per ordinance.
Meet that. That's per ordinance.
Okay.
So, not necessarily statute, but again, another instance where Dayton had previously been above and beyond what state statute requires.
So,
And
in
then
the
the ordinance
future,
does
one
say
thing-
mail to all of them, so.
Yeah.
I was going to say, in the future, one thing that might help is, as we have a better website that has development updates on it, I think there's going to be less public outcry in general, because that's one of the issues today is, there's just a planning commission packet, there's no easy place to go find stuff.
Yeah, the only other area for development applications is the public notice page, and it is
Right.
essentially the exact same thing that they receive in the mail.
Yep. So the website would go a long way to alleviate some concern that people have.
as long as people go to the website. But so the neighborhood just to our north here that's got the large lots. If somebody wants to put a non-conforming, secondary building on their property and it's a variance and it needs public notice, are we now sending that out to 1,300 feet as opposed to 500 feet?
Yes, and
Every application would have
Every
to-
application, yeah.
One important
Is there a way to
point,
distinguish that kind of thing?
No.
No, okay.
We've got to be consistent.
Yeah.
The idea of, the cost through a pass, and it makes sense when you're a developer, not necessarily when you're asking for a variance for a shed or something.
Yeah.
I can't remember if it was last year or the year before, we had a variance to have 4 ducks instead of 3 ducks. So the idea of.
We did, and that was a long conversation.
Yes. okay, you're gonna pay, I don't remember what our fees, $800 in your fee and 3,000 escrow, and then we're gonna charge you $500 in postage. Sounds a little unfair.
Well, that's
Well,
the
it
thing.
seems to me that they should be asking for a zoning amendment, not a variance.
Right, but it
in
would
those
still be
cases.
$500 in postage.
Well, yeah, like you're saying, for me, one of those darn Pulte home people, that has, a lot more density, if I wanted a variance on my property, I'm paying a lot more because the 1,250 is going to hit hundreds of properties.
Yeah.
Not
Plus,
just,
the thing is,
not
like,
just
if
25,
it's a
right?
single property or something, is there a way to distinguish between a single and multiple home? I don't know.
What,
It doesn't seem like it, but just,
What landed at 1,250? What was the rationale there?
13, so it's
Or
quarter mile,
1350.
and it's an arbitrary number that sounded good.
quarter mile sounds good.
Quarter mile sounds good. I mean, you went from 350 to 500 feet and then almost
Almost
tripling
tripled
it. So, I mean,
I think most of our applications that come in will benefit greatly from this. There's still going to be a handful, a number that come in where it's like, oh my gosh, that's a lot of mailings for a shed that's
Yes.
10 feet bigger than it's supposed to be.
yes.
But if there's not a way to distinguish it, I think this is still a betterment
Yeah,
to the system.
conditional use permits and variances cover a lot of different topics. So it's really difficult to
Batteries.
decipher.
It's only 9:40, Paul.
Yeah, I was gonna
You
say,
better have a better computer, because you know
think
that
it's not an
somebody's got
11:30
all
meeting.
I know. This is actually surprising. Usually it's a better battery.
Any more discussion? I'm glad you brought that up,
No,
Jeff, because there was an unintended consequence there that I didn't realize, and I'm glad you pointed that out, so we stay in tune to this, because it might be something that backfires too, that we have to revisit, but I do think it's overdue.
The primary thing that we're doing right now is growing and developments, right? And so it's going to benefit that process greatly by having a larger notification boundary. And there will be some unintended consequences on some of those smaller asks, but I think if you're exchanging that for being more transparent, more open with your notifications on these really hot topic items, I think it's worth it.
Yeah.
Well, the public hearings that we had tonight, we used the 1320, and the room was full. We didn't have a whole lot of speakers tonight, but it did attract people here.
Yeah,
And
more
I-
participation.
I still do think the website's gonna help a lot, because so many people that complain, it's because their neighbor or someone that they know has the packet, because it got mailed to them and they don't.
Yep.
And then once they realize they don't have it, they can go to the website and easily see what's going on. That's gonna help, because now it's even a challenge to go find stuff unless you're used to it.
And that was another consideration that John and I thought about when we put this together, was that you set a number, there's still going to be people left out.
Yes.
and
Oh, yeah,
it's-
there's still gonna be somebody
It
at
is,
1350.
My neighbor got one, how come I didn't?
Right.
Well, you're at 1351.
Yeah.
I assume this needs approval from us to go to council?
Yeah, a recommendation.
So can I recommend approval?
You can?
You just did.
I did.
Second.
All those in favor, we're gonna start down here, Jeff.
Aye.
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 Motion carries 4-0. This will go to the council on March 25th. All right,
Item 8.
new business, none. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Notices and announcements.
So preview, preview for April, so we'll have the preliminary plat for Schany parcel, as well as for Parkway Neighborhood Second Edition.
Parkway Neighborhood.
So Parkway Neighborhood, so this is southwest Dayton, so the west side of 94.
Yeah. So they're coming in for their preliminary plat.
For the second edition, yes.
The townhome development?
Yes. So this went to, when did it go to plan?
Where's the first edition?
South of Territorial
First
Street, south of
edition was-
Territorial Road, north of 81.
No.
Not that one?
This is south of I-94,
The big apartment building?
across Dayton Parkway.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Down
On
in
the
that corner.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are they gonna start construction this spring?
Is this the new phase one?
A lot of questions.
There's not a clear answer to that. So planning wise, phase one is the 180 unit apartment building. Phase two, I can't remember how many.
I can't remember either.
400 some townhome units. And I'm calling them townhome, they look like townhomes, they're going to act as an apartment.
Yeah. Rentals.
Yeah. Good. Shorter than tonight's meeting, so.
I thought we did pretty good
Promise.
tonight,
I thought-
actually.
Oh, that's lame.
I feel like we were a little better. Peter's not here.
You guys want to blame Peter? That's okay, but he's back to chair next week or next month.
I can't, so we've had a discussion, or Darren and I had a discussion recently, and it wasn't the first with other commissioners of when it slows down, not to say that April is, of having a larger conversation of what is the commission's expectations for what information we give to you, in how we write it, or what's included in the staff report, how do we present it, how can we be more efficient with our meetings. So going through a long meeting is a good example of, okay, how can we get better at things?
Yeah. And I think a good thing to talk about is on bigger plats like DCM Farms, what do we really want to see to make sure that you get from the applicant? Like, an example in this one is I would love to see a phasing plan.
Okay.
It just helps the public, it helps everyone put things in perspective instead of us having to ask questions and guess on it. There could be a lot of other things too, but that's what we should, we can talk about.
Especially the name, we're getting more participation from the community on these things.
That was just what I was going to
So
say.
for them, they'll see that.
We are in the process of having requirements established for applicants when they submit, so they can go through a plat checklist to document
Yeah.
all the items that they are submitting, so we can better understand when we have complete applications to present to you guys.
Easy question, do you want a full plan set? Or do you want us to pick and choose what sheets you get? I'm leaning more towards the engineers, because I think they're a little biased.
I don't think a full plan set's necessary, right? We need to see details and whatnot, but most of that plan set's pretty important, right? Existing conditions are important, grading plan's important, landscape plan's important, to some extent,
If the
utility
planning
layouts
commission,
are still important, but there's probably some pages that aren't needed, and that'll certainly cut down on the size of that packet.
Oh, yeah.
Which makes it hard to navigate.
Nick just said all the pages that I would used to seeing as an appraiser too that I would like to see.
Yeah.
But not everything.
Right, so I think of like a sewer and water plan, you'd have like the full page, not every detail, so like DCM.
Yeah, you'd have the
You have
the
the
layout.
site plan, and then it gets cut up into 6 pages.
You're not going to get the SWIP in a
No.
planning commission packet.
so that's a little technical, I think, for a planning commission when you have fine folks at Stantec that know what they're doing and can give us the information that we're looking for if we have questions about it, right? So I think if it's pertinent to a discussion, if there's a question that the staff has regarding a certain issue on the plat or the site plan or a landscape plan or a lighting plan or whatever it is, certainly include those items in the packet. Regardless of the size of the packet, it doesn't mean that our meetings are going to be shorter, right? So we still have to go through the normal discussions that we normally would. We just don't have to sift through all the other stuff that we don't need to or don't want to see. So whatever's easiest, I think, but just the pertinent information, I think, would be most beneficial for us.
And I know the packets get really big, like megabytes wise, but the grading plans, like I'm fine with just one grading plan,
Right.
even on
Big
DCM
one.
Farms, as long as I can zoom in, but I get it, that can be more difficult to get to us.
Yeah, you don't need all the overall plan, not the area plans.
Right.
For a lot of it.
Yeah, I just struggle with that maybe just a little bit for when we think of the way we use it. But what about the public too? You always have to think about the public. If you're one of the residents that is immediately adjacent to the development and you just have the ability to print on 8.5 by 11 or 11 by 17 or something, and you're like, I have no idea what's going on next to my house. Like for us, I just want to keep that in mind too.
The other concern is if it's
they
not,
could come get a copy of it.
if it's not in the packet, right, it's not part of the official record that we've looked at and made a determination on, and it happens to then get on a plan that the developer is always going to do, use the whole time along, but it was never on any plans that we saw or taken into consideration. And now the public comes in and says, what about this thing?
Yeah.
I never saw this anywhere on any of the information that was given to the
Yep,
to the
that's
city.
the trade-off.
So
Yeah.
better just provide it all. In the end.
I mean, I think that's where you land, but I mean, the public record's a public record, right? So, even application forms, when they apply for, actually doing all the construction permits and all that stuff too, that's gonna be part of that public record as well, so. But it ultimately does get approved by the city council, so.
Yeah, there are subtle changes that happen. So, the Oppidan, for example, they came in with a site plan, eventually they'll come in with they came in with the concept plan, eventually they'll come in with a site plan. There might be a different shade of brown, or whatever it is. So, it's more, staff is going to have some discretion of what is a minor change that doesn't need to be reviewed publicly or versus a major change that would have to come back to the commission and council.
If the planning commission wants to make a recommendation to go in front of council, what's the process of doing that? Do we vote on it? I guess where I'm going with this, you said Oppidan, but we need to get that plan to the east of there figured out. We can't just.
Just give direction.
Yeah, so we need to have, because we have to go through the whole public notice, all that kind of stuff, so.
Yeah, so in that case, this is a bigger project, so we would probably hire that out for a consultant, so there's a little bit of cost associated with that, but really it's giving direction. So if you're giving us direction, one project every, in this case it's like, I don't know how often this would occur. That's simple. If it's happening every month,
yeah,
that blows our budget.
Yeah.
So.
Okay.
Yeah. I think what we would do is probably, the planning commission would give us direction, we'd take it to the council, see if the council agrees with it.
Can we give you direction?
Yeah.
My direction is we need to figure out how to get that guided appropriately.
Sure.
That land east of there.
So, yeah,
Land use and access.
Expand it a little bit, so south of 117th.
Yeah, once we solve the
East
land
Brunswick
use, it'll be
Road.
easier to solve what we need to, how we care about access.
Sure.
I'd concur.
Okay.
Yeah, I think having a consensus on the planning commission for that is probably beneficial.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
so we're not just cherry picking what everybody wants to see happen. So I do agree that should happen, or that we could propose that to the council to take a look at.
Okay. I'll add, we've had a couple of proposed ordinance amendments that didn't go anywhere, and it took a lot of time to prepare, so I would just caution, like, when you give us direction, are we exploring different options, or are we, I guess kind of where I want to go is if we're putting a lot of work towards something, I want it to end up with some kind of good out of it.
Yeah. And so as an individual planning commission member, I would suggest if you have an idea, you do your best to document it and present it to John, who shows it up to us, and then now the council even knows, it's not just us talking, there's something more substantive to it of why you think it's just easier.
Well, I'll write up if directed by the majority of the commission, and everyone's nodding their head, I'll write something up, propose it to the council. This is a bigger project, it'll take some time to go through. So we'll probably talk more about it in April, since there's only 2 items.
How would that time out with the current OPM or
I mean,
whatever?
I'm not a fan of tabling properties, but when they ultimately come in here, if we don't have it figured out, this is an example of why something might go up to the last day to make a decision, because we want to make sure we're making the right decision. And that's why I want to get ahead of this. I keep saying that.
We good?
You're concerned that they may move that commercial side?
My concern if they did that plan was the commercials. I mean, it's an afterthought in everyone's brain that I don't know what that's going to become and if it needs access. But somehow we got to figure out if we're just going to cut off all access to it. It's,
We could do a moratorium in the area after this gets through.
Well, you could do that now, too. This is at a concept plan stage.
It is.
I hate to do that to
Yeah.
somebody, but.
I think a good starting point is getting council's feedback on what they, if this is a priority for the majority of the council to.
Well, the properties to the east are residential still, right? So they're not even guided towards an industrial or commercial use?
They're guided towards commercial
Okay.
and light
the
industrial.
corner though, right? On 117.
And even the stuff, so the stuff even to the south, there's talk, people are talking about development applications, I'll just say that in that area.
Seems like industrial would be still
And I
a
think
good
the-
use to push towards
East
French.
The 3 parcels directly to the east, I thought I looked, it was all the same property owner.
Yep.
Yeah, so there's a good chance that would all develop together.
And, yeah, and,
And I don't know if that's recent, if they purchased properties or if
They've
it's
been there
always been
forever.
that. Okay.
but one of the adjacent.
Makes it easier though, right?
One of the
It's all
adjacent
3.
ones is already owned by
Oh, yeah.
a developer or a developer's son.
Yep.
And so I don't.
The one on the corner isn't, but it's the other 3 below it. are
And the
all-
one on the corners.
And you keep
They'll
going
have to
further
carry her
south,
out.
so the yellow parcels too are kind of part of it. 'Cause,
Yep.
I mean, I don't know what they should be, but that's what we need to figure out, so we need to know if we need to, how we need to connect them or not.
We do have the existing residential there, and then we're gonna have residential on the right, on the east side of French Lake. Right, so.
And it's a big difference, if it becomes medium-density residential, then that plan presented is not a concern to me. You know, they can get their access off East French Lake Road.
You want to talk more about this now, or do you want to wait till April?
I'm good.
It's 5.
No, I'm fine. Continue,
I care about it.
We still have
but
2 more
inertia is
hours
good.
for the night. Let's
Yeah.
go. Let's go.
I'm looking at Jason, what aren't we thinking of for getting direction? Well, I mean, it's kind of this could be anything. And so what is the highest and best use? Is it industrial? Is it residential? What type of residential? Is it commercial? It really could be anything.
I think it's industrial. I'd be curious to see what other people think. I just don't know how far south to go with it. That's the dilemma.
Yeah, what I'm thinking of,
Well,
if
connecting
we,
to 113th maybe.
Yes.
if we came up with, say, 3 or 4 different concept plans of, here's industrial, here's, single family versus or townhomes, or there's a lot of options.
Kind of think apartments are out. I think it's medium density. Like if it's not industrial, I think we stick with the low density transitioning to medium density as a corner. That's what I think.
Yeah, I kind of feel like 113th up to 117th could be industrial, light industrial.
Yeah, 113th to 117th industrial. And how you go south of there, that's where you could keep pushing industrial south if people wanted. Obviously, you got to be conscious of buffering the where Jeff lives.
Oh, that's your neighborhood?
Yep.
That's my neighborhood right there.
Yep.
Let's get another cubes right there.
And so, and their stencil parcels is down there too. I mean, I know that, I don't want to say that that's been a challenge. I think it's just a tough site. I don't know if you put a different land use on it, if it would really change it. It's a tough site.
On that one, there's still, the idea is still to run a utility and or a road easement straight up,
Yep.
right?
Yeah.
Good. We've actually talked to the property owner now about it.
And you didn't get scared off?
They were, no, we could work with them.
Okay.
But they weren't excited because both of them had ideas for that land, but they also didn't seem that opposed to it either. There's 2 parcels.
Some people get concerned about different land uses, how it might impact their value, but the reality is, in areas like Dayton, the price per acre doesn't change that much based upon the land use unless you're getting a ton of density. And then you have feasibility issues, no different than Salt at 94. It's a challenge to build an apartment building right now. Marker. So, I think industrial would be good. I'll say this, that I'm not against bigger industrial buildings, but it's not 3 times more expensive to build a smaller industrial building. But it's when you get too many big industrial buildings, it creates a different burden too. And this is a funky area with the angles and the wetland. That I'm fine with smaller industrial.
It's more exterior wall,
Yeah.
right? That's where the cost comes.
Yeah.
But it's the same amount of roof and
Yeah.
all that.
Yeah.
Same amount of slab.
There's two spec buildings, well, there's 5 or 6 spec buildings on Shakopee. They got 1 million square feet, and we're fortunate we absorbed ours because they've been sitting on theirs for 2 years now. And their buildings are 200,000 and 100,000, and they're both saying that they're gonna divide them into 2 or 3 tenants each building. But they have no tenants yet, so maybe it ends up being 1.
So why do we keep hearing that it's hot and yet they can't fill them? Well, what's that all
It's
about?
market sector by market sector. I mean, so Dayton feels hot because we just absorbed 1 million square feet about with the half a cubes and Inland's property next door, Opus to the south. I mean, we just absorbed a lot. Capital Partners building. So I don't want to call it hot. It's a good thing. I mean, there's still a lot of vacant industrial in Maple Grove where they built all that stuff, but they also have rents 30% higher.
Good stuff in Broken Park off 169 getting filled.
It's getting filled.
There's a lot going up there.
Yep. It's getting filled. They probably have 2 more years left and it's done. Unless something changes in the market.
Yeah.
No more Falls Festival.
Feeling good?
Yep.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That's kind of like, we're not roll call.
Actually, had one more thing.